Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever driven through West Texas at night? I mean, late at night, when the highway stretches out like a thick black ribbon under the stars? Almost unreal? That's exactly where it happened. That's where everything changed for Kara and me, though we didn't know it then. We knew nothing. I'm Rhett Alvarez, and in the summer of 2019, I was working as a deputy sheriff in Presidio County. I was 26, fresh out of a complicated relationship. I was living in a camper outside Marfa, and I preferred working the night shifts because the pay was a little better and there was no one waiting for me at home. The job was mostly quiet and boring. Occasionally, it was interrupted by drunk drivers or a tourist who had veered far off I-90 in search of the Marfa lights and gotten lost. Yeah, those lights. Everyone around here knows about them. Mysterious glowing orbs that appear in the desert, hovering and dancing on the horizon. Scientists say it's car headlights refracting through layers of air at different temperatures. Locals say it's something else. Ghost lights, spirit fires, UFOs, whatever you want to call them. I'd seen them myself a dozen times, always distant, always unexplainable, but never threatening, just part of the landscape, like the mountains or the endless sky. This night, though, this particular night in late July, I wasn't thinking about lights or aliens or anything except finishing my shift and getting home to sleep. It was a Tuesday. I remember that specifically because Tuesdays were always dead quiet. The kind of shift where you drive in circles for 8 hours and see maybe 2 other vehicles. I was headed east on Highway 67, about 15 miles outside Marfa, windows down because the AC in my cruiser had been broken for a month, and the department kept promising to fix it. The air was hot, even at 2 in the morning, dry and smelling like creosote and dust. My radio crackled occasionally with dispatch checking in, but mostly it was silent. Just me, the road, and the darkness pressing in from all sides. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was another car stopped on the shoulder, maybe someone with engine trouble or a flat tire. But as I got closer, maybe a quarter mile out, I realized the light wasn't on the side of the road. It was on the road. Right in the middle of both lanes, just sitting there, perfectly still. Not moving, not blinking. Just a sphere of pale, yellow-white light, roughly the size of a beach ball, hovering about 3 feet off the asphalt. I eased off the gas, my heart doing this weird double beat thing it does when something feels wrong. The light didn't react to my approach, it just waited, and that's the word that came to my mind immediately. Waited, like it was expecting me. I should have called it in right then. Protocol said I should have radioed dispatch, reported an obstruction in the roadway, requested backup. But I didn't. Something about the light made me hesitate. Made me want to understand it first before I sounded like an idiot over the radio saying there was a glowing ball floating in the middle of Highway 67. I slowed to maybe 20 miles per hour, then 15, then 10. The light remained motionless. No sound came from it, no heat shimmer, nothing. It was just there, impossibly calm and bright in the middle of nowhere. When I was about 50 yards away, I stopped the cruiser completely. We sat there facing each other, me and this thing, separated by 50 yards of empty road. I could feel sweat running down my back, could hear my own breathing loud in the cab of the car. The night had gone completely silent. No wind, no crickets, no distant highway noise. Just silence. And then, because I'm apparently an idiot, I turned on my high beams. The effect was immediate and completely wrong. Instead of illuminating the light or making it brighter, my high beams seemed to be absorbed by it, swallowed up like water into sand. The sphere didn't glow brighter or cast shadows or do any of the normal things light does. It just sat there, drinking in my headlights, and for a brief moment, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, it seemed to pulse slightly darker, like it was savoring the taste. That's when the road moved. I don't mean the light moved, or I moved, or there was an earthquake. I mean the road itself, the asphalt beneath the light, seemed to ripple. Just once. Barely visible, like a breath expanding and contracting. Like the highway was alive and had just inhaled. I threw the cruiser into park and grabbed my radio, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I've got something blocking Highway 67 eastbound, approximately mile marker 42. The radio crackled. "Unit 7, can you describe the obstruction?" I stared at the light. It hadn't moved. The road beneath it looked normal again, solid and still. It's some kind of, I don't know, equipment maybe? Reflecting light? I'm going to investigate on foot. Copy that, Unit 7. Use caution. I didn't feel cautious. I felt terrified in a way I'd never experienced before. A primal fear that had nothing to do with criminals or danger and everything to do with wrongness. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to reverse the car, turn around, and drive until I hit Mexico or the ocean or anywhere that wasn't here. But I didn't, I couldn't, because I'm a deputy sheriff, and this was my job, and also because some part of me, some stupid curious part, had to know. I stepped out of the cruiser, leaving the door open and the engine running. The heat hit me immediately, that thick Texas night heat that makes the air feel solid. I put my hand on my service weapon, though I had no idea what good a gun would do against a floating ball of light. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and ridiculous. "Is anyone there? This is Presidio County Sheriff's Department." No response. The light continued its vigil, unchanging. I took a step forward, then another. The asphalt felt normal under my boots, solid and gritty. I kept my eyes on the light, watching for any movement, any sign of what it might do next. 30 yards away now. 25. That's when I heard the sound. It wasn't coming from the light. It was coming from behind me, back toward my cruiser. A soft clicking noise, rhythmic and deliberate, like fingernails tapping on glass. I spun around, my hand going to my gun. The cruiser's windows were dark. Empty. Nothing there. But the clicking continued, moving now, circling around the vehicle. I could see it in my mind's eye even though I couldn't see anything physically. Something walking around my car, examining it, curious. "Show yourself!" I shouted, pulling my weapon now, aiming at nothing. "Police, I'm armed!" The clicking stopped. Silence rushed back in, heavy and oppressive. I stood there for 10 seconds, 20, my heart hammering, sweat stinging my eyes. Nothing. No movement, no sound, no sign of whatever had been making that noise. When I turned back to face the light, it was closer. Not by much, maybe 10 feet, but it had definitely moved while my back was turned. It hovered there at 15 yards, still silent, still waiting. But now I could see details I hadn't noticed before. The surface of the light wasn't smooth. It had texture, tiny geometric patterns that shifted and reconfigured like a kaleidoscope. And inside the light, deep inside it, I could see what looked like shadows moving, or maybe not shadows exactly, but absences of light shaped like things I couldn't quite identify. I raised my phone with my other hand, the one not holding the gun, and opened the camera app. My fingers were clumsy, slippery with sweat, but I managed to start recording. The screen showed the road, showed my cruiser in the distance with its lights still on. But where the light should have been, there was nothing. Just empty highway. I lowered the phone and looked with my naked eyes. The light was still there, clear as day. I raised the phone again, looked at the screen. Nothing, just road. "What are you?" I whispered. The light pulsed once, a quick contraction and expansion, and suddenly I felt something in my head. Not a voice exactly, but a pressure, like someone had reached inside my skull and was pressing gently but firmly against the inside of my forehead. With that pressure came an emotion that wasn't mine, a feeling of immense curiosity mixed with something else, something that felt almost like loneliness. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my gun. The pressure vanished immediately, but the feeling lingered, that sense of something vast and alone, reaching out across impossible distances. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, my legs feeling weak. I backed up toward my cruiser, keeping my eyes on the light, which now seemed content to stay where it was. My hand found the door handle, and I practically fell into the driver's seat, slamming the door and locking it even though I knew locks wouldn't mean anything against whatever that thing was. I sat there breathing hard, my weapon still in my hand, watching the light through the windshield. It remained motionless for another minute, 2 minutes, and then, without any warning or fanfare, it simply rose straight up into the air. 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. Moving so smoothly it looked like it was on rails. When it reached maybe 300 feet, it stopped, hung there for a moment like it was taking one last look, and then it shot away to the northwest so fast I couldn't track it. Just a streak of light across the stars, and then nothing. Gone. I sat in my cruiser for another 10 minutes, maybe 15, waiting to see if it would come back. It didn't. The road looked normal. The night sounds gradually returned, crickets and wind and distant trucks on the interstate. Everything was exactly as it had been, except nothing was the same. My hands were still shaking when I picked up the radio again. "Dispatch, Unit 7. Go ahead, Unit 7. The obstruction has cleared. False alarm. Probably just some reflective debris. I'm 10-8, continuing patrol." "Copy that, Unit 7. I should have reported it. I should have told them everything. But what would I have said? That I'd seen a UFO? That something had touched my mind? They would have thought I was drunk or having a breakdown. Hell, maybe I was. I put the cruiser in drive and continued east, but I didn't go far. A mile down the road, I pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned gas station and sat there until dawn, drinking cold coffee from my thermos and trying to convince myself that what I'd seen was explainable, rational, normal. It didn't work, because even then, sitting in that empty parking lot with the first light of morning turning the desert gold, I knew 3 things with absolute certainty. 1, what I'd seen was real. 2, it had been waiting for me specifically, not just any car, but me. And 3, this wasn't over. The next day, I called in sick for my shift. First time I'd ever done that in 2 years on the job. I slept until noon, woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, and then I did something I'd never done before. I went looking for answers. There's a little diner in Marfa called the Star Cafe, been there since the 50s, where all the locals hang out and trade stories over chicken fried steak and weak coffee. I'd eaten there 100 times, usually just keeping to myself. But today I had questions. The waitress, Maria, a woman in her 60s who'd lived in Marfa her entire life, brought me coffee without me asking. "You look rough, mijo," she said, setting down the cup. "Night shift getting to you?" Something like that. I wrapped my hands around the cup, grateful for the warmth, even though it was already 90 degrees outside. "Maria, can I ask you something? About the lights?" Her expression changed, became more guarded. "The Marfa lights?" "Yeah. Have you ever... has anyone ever seen them up close? She was quiet for a long moment, wiping down the counter even though it was already clean. Finally, she said, "Why are you asking?" I told her. Not everything, but enough. A strange light on the highway, how it had moved, how it had made me feel. I left out the part about the clicking sounds and the pressure in my head, but I could see from her face that she understood anyway. "You're not the first," she said softly. "Won't be the last either. People have been seeing things out in that desert for as long as anyone can remember. Most folks just don't talk about it. Why not? Because talking makes it real. And if it's real, then you have to deal with it being real." She glanced around the diner, making sure no one else was listening. "There's a woman you should talk to. Journalist from Houston. Been poking around town for the last few weeks asking questions about UFO sightings. Staying at the Paisano Hotel. Name's Kara Monroe." Kara Monroe. I wrote it down on a napkin, though I knew I wouldn't forget. "She believes in this stuff?" I asked. Maria shrugged. "She believes in something. Whether it's the same thing you believe in, that's for you to figure out." I found Kara Monroe that afternoon sitting on the patio of the Paisano Hotel, typing on a laptop and drinking iced tea. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp eyes that sized me up the moment I approached. "Kara Monroe," I said. She looked up, and I saw her gaze flick to my uniform. I was still wearing it, hadn't bothered to change. "That's me, and you are?" "Rhett Alvarez. I'm a deputy with Presidio County. I heard you've been asking around about lights in the desert." Her expression shifted from wary to interested. She closed her laptop and gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Sit. You want something to drink?" "I'm good." I sat down, suddenly unsure how to begin. "I had an experience last night, on Highway 67. I saw something." "Tell me everything," she said, and there was an intensity to her voice that made me think this wasn't just academic curiosity. This mattered to her personally. So I told her. All of it this time. The light in the road, the clicking sounds, the way my camera couldn't see it, the pressure in my head. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, just looking at me with those sharp eyes. "Do you still have the recording?" she asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her. She watched it twice, her face giving nothing away, and then she pulled out her own phone and started typing notes. "I've interviewed 17 people in the last 3 weeks," she said without looking up. "All of them have stories similar to yours. Close encounters, usually late at night, usually on remote roads. Lights that don't behave like normal lights. Objects that cameras can't quite capture. Feelings of being watched or followed." 17 people? I felt my stomach drop. That many? That many who were willing to talk to me. I'd guess there are dozens more who haven't said anything. She looked up from her phone. "Whatever's happening out here, it's not random. There's a pattern. These things, whatever they are, they're showing themselves deliberately. The question is why." "You sound like you've been researching this for a while." 5 years. She set her phone down, and for the first time I saw something in her face besides professional interest. I saw fear. My brother disappeared on Highway 90 in 2017. His car was found abandoned near Valentine, doors locked, keys in the ignition, phone on the seat. No sign of struggle, no footprints, nothing. It was like he just vanished. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "Did they ever find him?" She shook her head. "No. But the night he disappeared, 3 different people reported seeing strange lights in the sky along that same stretch of highway. The sheriff's department wrote it off as unrelated. Said my brother probably wandered into the desert, got lost, died of exposure. But I know my brother. He was smart, experienced, careful. he wouldn't have just wandered off. You think something took him? I think something encounters people out here, and most of the time they get to walk away and tell stories. But sometimes they don't. And I need to know why. I need to know what happened to Daniel. We sat there in silence for a moment, the afternoon sun beating down, tourists walking past oblivious to the conversation happening right in front of them. So what do we do? I asked finally. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. We go looking for answers. Are you working tonight? I've got the next 2 nights off. Good, because I've been tracking the pattern. And if I'm right, there's going to be activity tonight on Ranch Road 2810, about 20 miles south of here. Multiple sightings in that area over the last month, all between midnight and 3 a.m. You want to go out there? Deliberately? Unless you've got a better idea. I should have said no. I should have walked away right then, gone back to my trailer, called my supervisor and told them everything. Let someone else handle it. But I didn't. Because Kara was right. I needed answers too. I needed to understand what I'd seen, what had touched my mind on that empty highway. I'll pick you up at 11, I said. That night, I met Kara in the parking lot of the Paisano. She was dressed in dark clothes, practical boots, and had a backpack that clinked when she set it down. What's in the bag? I asked. Camera equipment. Night vision goggles, EMF detector, voice recorder, flashlights, first aid kit. She looked at my skeptical expression and shrugged. I like to be prepared. We drove south out of Marfa in my personal truck, a beat-up Ford Ranger that rattled but ran. The highway was empty at this hour, just us and the occasional semi hauling goods between El Paso and San Antonio. The moon was a thin crescent, barely providing any light, and the stars were so bright they cast shadows. Ranch Road 2810 was a narrow 2-lane road that cut through open ranch land, mostly used by locals and the occasional lost tourist. There was nothing out here except scrub brush, dirt, and cattle. No streetlights, no houses, just darkness in every direction. I pulled off onto a dirt road about halfway down the ranch road and killed the engine. The silence was immediate and total. Now what? I asked. Kara was already setting up her equipment, mounting a camera on a small tripod pointing out the windshield. Now we wait, and we watch. We waited. Midnight came and went, then 12:30, then 1. Nothing happened. No lights, no sounds, no strange presences, just us sitting in a truck in the middle of nowhere, looking at an empty road. Maybe your pattern was wrong, I said quietly. Maybe, Kara admitted, but she didn't sound convinced. She was staring out at the darkness with an intensity that was almost frightening. Or maybe they know we're here. That's a comforting thought. The truth isn't always comforting. At 1:15, the temperature in the truck dropped. Not gradually, but suddenly, like someone had opened a freezer door. I could see my breath fogging in the air. Could see Kara's hands start to shake. "Red," she whispered. "Look." I followed her gaze. About 100 yards down the road, maybe a little more, there was a light. Not on the road this time, but hovering about 10 feet above it. And it wasn't alone. There were 3 of them, arranged in a perfect triangle, pulsing gently in sync like a heartbeat. "Oh God," I breathed. There they are. Kara's hands moved quickly, checking her camera, adjusting the settings, her breath coming fast and visible in the sudden cold. "It's recording. I'm getting this. Tell me you see them too." "I see them," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The 3 lights held their formation, pulsing in perfect unison, and with each pulse I felt that same pressure I'd experienced the night before, gentle but insistent. pressing against the inside of my skull. "They're doing it again," I said. "That thing, that feeling in my head." Kara turned to look at me, her face pale in the dashboard light. "What kind of feeling?" "Like someone's knocking, like they're trying to get my attention." I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to relieve the pressure. It didn't help. "Can you feel it?" She shook her head. "No, nothing, just cold." She grabbed the EMF detector from her bag, a small device that looked like an old-fashioned radio, and turned it on. It immediately began clicking rapidly, the needle jumping into the red zone. Jesus, the electromagnetic field out there is off the charts. Whatever those things are, they're putting out massive amounts of energy. The lights began to move. Not toward us, thank God, but slowly westward, maintaining their triangular formation. They drifted maybe 50 feet, then stopped again, pulsing, waiting. "They want us to follow them," I said. And I don't know how I knew that, but I knew it with absolute certainty. "They're leading us somewhere." "No way," Kara said firmly. "That's how people disappear. That's probably how Daniel disappeared, following something that seemed to want to show him something." But even as she said it, I could see the conflict in her face, the desperate need to understand, warring with basic self-preservation. "We stay in the truck," I said. "We can follow them in the truck, keep our distance, but we stay mobile. If anything feels wrong, we can leave." She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her making the calculation, weighing the risks against the possible answers. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but slow. Really slow. And if I say we leave immediately." I started the engine, and the lights immediately responded, pulsing brighter, almost like they were pleased. I put the truck in drive and eased forward, keeping my speed to maybe 5 miles per hour. My eyes locked on the 3 lights ahead of us. They moved as we moved, maintaining the same distance, leading us off the ranch road and onto what looked like an old fire road, barely 2 ruts in the dirt cutting through the scrub. The truck bounced and rattled, and Kara braced herself against the dashboard, her other hand keeping the camera steady. "Where are they taking us?" she muttered. "I don't know, but we're getting farther from the main road." I could feel my heart rate climbing, that fight-or-flight response kicking in harder with every yard we traveled deeper into the darkness. We followed the lights for maybe 10 minutes, though it felt like an hour. The landscape around us was utterly empty, just flat desert stretching to the horizon in every direction. No lights from nearby houses, no highway glow, nothing but us and them and the vast Texas night. Then the lights stopped. They hovered there in their perfect triangle, pulsing steadily. And as we got closer, I realized they'd stopped at the edge of a wide depression in the ground, maybe 200 feet across, roughly circular. It looked like a natural formation, possibly an old dried lake bed, the earth in the center darker and more compact than the surrounding dirt. "What is this place?" Kara whispered. "I don't know. I've never been out this far." I stopped the truck about 30 yards from the depression, close enough to see clearly but far enough that I could turn around quickly if needed. The 3 lights began to descend, lowering themselves into the depression until they were hovering just a few feet above the dark earth. And then they changed. The pulsing stopped. The lights began to swirl, mixing and merging like water being stirred, and from that swirling mass came shapes. They weren't solid exactly, more like projections of light, but they had definite forms. Humanoid forms, but wrong in ways I couldn't quite articulate. Too tall, too thin, proportions slightly off. "Are you getting this?" I asked. Kara didn't answer. She was staring at the camera's screen, and when I glanced over, I saw that her hands were shaking so badly the image was blurring. On the screen, I could see the depression clearly, the dark earth, the surrounding desert. But the lights weren't there. Neither were the shapes. "The camera," she whispered. "It's not seeing them, just like yours didn't see them. What the hell are we actually looking at?" One of the shapes moved, gliding across the depression toward us with that same smooth, impossible motion. Kara grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. "Start the truck," she said urgently. "Start the truck right now." But I couldn't. I was frozen, watching that shape approach, and with it came that pressure in my head again, stronger this time, more focused. And with the pressure came images, flashing through my mind too fast to fully process. A vast, dark space filled with stars. A sense of incredible distance traveled. Loneliness so profound it felt like drowning. And underneath it all, a question being asked over and over in a language that wasn't made of words. "Do you understand? Can you see? Do you understand?" "Rat?" Kara was shaking me now, her voice high and panicked. "We need to go!" The shape stopped maybe 15 feet from the truck. This close, I could see more details. It had a head, or something like a head, elongated and smooth. Where eyes should have been, there were just dark ovals, deep and empty. No mouth that I could see, no nose. Nothing that suggested it was anything like human, despite the overall shape. It raised what might have been an arm, a long, thin appendage that ended in something like fingers, but too many of them. And it pointed at me. At me. Not at Kara, not at the truck. At me, specifically. The pressure in my head became pain, sharp and bright, and with the pain came a flood of emotions that weren't mine. Curiosity, frustration, hope, and that same overwhelming loneliness I'd felt before. It was trying to communicate, I realized. Trying desperately to make me understand something. And then, like a door opening in my mind, I understood. They weren't from here. Not from Texas, not from Earth, not from anywhere close. They'd come from somewhere unimaginably far away, following signals, following traces of intelligence, looking for others like themselves. And they'd found Earth, found humans, but they couldn't quite connect. We were almost right, almost compatible, but not quite. Like trying to tune into a radio station that was slightly off frequency. They could see us, could observe us, but couldn't truly communicate. And it frustrated them. It made them lonely. The shape before me pulsed once, and I felt something like gratitude wash through my mind. It had gotten through. For just a moment, we'd understood each other. Then it pulled back, gliding away from the truck, and the pain in my head vanished like it had never been there. The three lights separated again, reforming their triangle, and they began to rise, up and up, moving faster now, until they were just pinpoints against the stars. And then they were gone. Kara and I sat in silence for a long moment, both of us breathing hard, both of us trying to process what we'd just experienced. Finally, she spoke. "What did you see?" she asked quietly. "When it pointed at you, what did you see?" I told her. Everything that had flooded into my mind, the images and emotions and that desperate attempt at connection. When I finished, she was crying, tears running down her face that she didn't bother to wipe away. "Daniel," she whispered. "That's what happened to Daniel. They took him. Not to hurt him, but because they thought maybe they could connect with him. Maybe he was the right frequency. Kara, they're still trying," she continued, her voice shaking. "That's why they keep coming back, why they keep appearing to people. They're looking for someone who can bridge that gap, someone who can truly understand them and help them understand us. But why take people? Why not just, I don't know, leave?" She looked at me, and in the dim light from the dashboard, her face looked ancient, haunted. Because they're lonely, Rhett, you felt it yourself. They've traveled so far, and they found intelligence, but they can't connect. And loneliness like that, isolation like that, it makes you do desperate things. We drove back to Marfa in silence. Kara's camera had recorded an hour of empty desert and an unexplained drop in temperature. Nothing more. The EMF detector had spiked, yes, but that could be explained a dozen different ways. We had experienced something profound and terrifying, but we had no proof. Nothing that would convince anyone who hadn't been there. When I dropped her off at the hotel, she turned to me before getting out. "I'm going back out there tomorrow night," she said. "Alone, if I have to. But I'd rather not be alone." "Why?" I asked. "We found what we were looking for. We know what they are now. Or at least we know they're not hostile. Isn't that enough?" "No," she said simply. "Because they still have my brother. Maybe not physically, maybe he's dead and gone, but they have his memories, his consciousness, whatever they took when they tried to connect with him. And I need to know if there's any part of him still out there. I need to know if I can reach him." She got out of the truck and walked into the hotel without looking back, and I sat there in the parking lot for a long time, thinking about what she'd said, about loneliness and connection, and the terrible risks people take when they need answers badly enough. I should have gone home. I should have gotten some sleep, shown up for my shift the next night and let Kara chase her ghosts alone. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. But I didn't do the smart thing. The next night, I met Kara in the same parking lot. This time, she had even more equipment, including what looked like an old ham radio and a laptop covered in stickers. "What's all this?" I asked. "I've been doing research," she said, loading everything into my truck. Other people who've had close encounters, the ones who could communicate, they all reported the same thing. A feeling like tuning, like trying to match frequencies. I think if I can generate the right electromagnetic pattern, the right signal, I might be able to enhance that connection. Maybe even initiate it. That sounds dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. She climbed into the truck and looked at me. "You don't have to come." I meant it when I said I'd do this alone. "I'm coming," I said, starting the engine. "Someone has to make sure you don't do anything too stupid." We drove back out to Ranch Road 2810, to that same dirt track that led to the depression. The moon was a little fuller tonight, providing just enough light to see by, and the stars were as brilliant as ever. I parked in the exact same spot as the night before, and we waited. Midnight passed, then 12:30, then 1. No lights appeared, no temperature drop, no pressure in my head, nothing. "Maybe they're not coming," I said. "They'll come," Kara replied, adjusting her equipment. She had the EMF detector running, the ham radio tuned to some frequency I didn't understand, and the laptop showing what looked like wave patterns. I've been analyzing the data from last night. They appear in cycles, patterns. If I'm right, they should show up around 1:30. And if you're wrong, then we wasted a night sitting in the desert. At 1:27, the EMF detector began clicking. Slowly at first, then faster. Kara leaned forward, her eyes locked on the device, and I saw her hand move to the ham radio. "They're here," she whispered. I looked out at the depression, and sure enough, there they were. 3 lights again, the same triangular formation, hovering above the dark earth. But this time they were brighter, pulsing faster, almost agitated. "They know we have the equipment," I said, feeling that familiar pressure starting to build in my head. "They can sense it somehow." Kara began adjusting dials on the ham radio, and suddenly the truck was filled with sound, a low thrumming that seemed to vibrate in my bones. It wasn't pleasant, wasn't music, but it had a rhythm to it. a pattern that felt almost like language. The lights responded immediately. They dropped lower, pulsing in sync with the sound from the radio, and the pressure in my head intensified. But it was different now. More organized, more controlled, like someone had taken static and turned it into a clear signal. "It's working," Kara breathed. "Oh my God, it's working. I'm actually communicating with them." The shapes began to form again, 3 of them this time, emerging from the lights. They moved toward the truck, and I felt my hand instinctively reach for the keys, ready to start the engine and get us out of there. But Kara grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "Wait, just wait, I need to try something." She picked up her phone and pulled up a photo, Daniel's photo. I recognized him from pictures I'd seen in her research materials, a young man with Kara's sharp eyes and an easy smile. She held the phone up toward the windshield, toward the approaching shapes. "Daniel Monroe," she said clearly. "Do you know this person? Do you have him?" The shapes stopped. All 3 of them froze simultaneously, and the pressure in my head changed, became questioning, searching. And then one of the shapes moved forward alone, coming right up to the truck, and it raised its hand to the windshield, almost touching the glass where Kara held the phone. The world went white. Not the normal kind of white. Not like looking at a bright light. This was white that somehow had depth and texture and substance. I was still in the truck. I could feel the seat beneath me, could hear Kara gasping beside me, but I couldn't see anything except that impossible white. And then images began to appear in the white. Memories, I realized. Daniel's memories. I saw him driving on a dark highway, singing along to the radio. Saw him notice lights in his rearview mirror, impossible lights that moved wrong. Saw him pull over, curious, always so curious, getting out of his car to get a better look. Saw the lights descend, saw the shapes emerge, saw Daniel's face change from curiosity to wonder to fear as something reached out and touched him. And then I saw what happened next, and it was worse than I'd imagined. They hadn't killed him. They hadn't even hurt him, not physically, but they'd tried so hard to connect, to understand, to communicate, that they'd pulled pieces of his consciousness into themselves, trying to comprehend how humans thought, how we experienced reality. And in the process, they'd damaged something essential. They'd taken too much. I saw Daniel, or what was left of Daniel, existing in some space that wasn't quite real and wasn't quite not real, aware but not aware, thinking but not quite thinking. A ghost in their machine, a memory they couldn't let go of because he represented their closest attempt at connection. And I felt their grief, deep, profound grief at what they'd accidentally done, at how they'd hurt something they were trying to understand. The white faded, and I was back in the truck, gasping for breath, tears streaming down my face. Beside me, Kara was sobbing openly, her whole body shaking. "He's gone," she choked out. "He's been gone this whole time. They didn't mean to, but they destroyed him." The shape at our windshield pulled back, and through the glass I could see something I never thought I'd see from something so alien, an expression of sorrow. A gesture that in any language, in any form, meant, "I'm sorry, we're so sorry." The 3 shapes returned to the lights, and the lights began to rise, but slower this time, almost reluctant. They climbed higher and higher, and I knew with certainty that this would be the last time. They'd shown us the truth, painful as it was, and now they were leaving. Maybe they'd never come back to this area again. Maybe they'd go somewhere else, keep searching for that impossible connection they craved. Or maybe they'd finally understand that some gaps can't be bridged, that some kinds of loneliness can't be fixed. We sat in the truck until dawn, not talking, just being present with each other in our shared grief and shock. When the sun finally rose, painting the desert in shades of gold and pink, Kara wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "I need to go back to Houston," she said quietly. "I need to tell Daniel's wife, his kids, that I know what happened. I can't prove it. They'll probably think I've lost my mind, but I need to tell them anyway." "What will you say?" "The truth. That he died trying to understand something beautiful and terrible. That he was brave and curious, and it cost him everything." She looked at me, her eyes red but clear. "What about you? What are you going to do?" I thought about that for a long time. About the lights, about the loneliness, about the terrible risks of trying to connect with something fundamentally different from yourself. "I'm going to keep doing my job," I said finally. "Keep patrolling these roads, keep watching the skies, and if anyone else reports seeing lights, I'm going to believe them. I'm going to listen to their stories and take them seriously because that's what they deserve." Kara nodded. She gathered her equipment, and I drove her back to the Paisano Hotel. Before she got out, she gave me her card. "If you ever need to talk about this," she said, "or if something else happens, call me. You're one of maybe a dozen people in the world who would understand." "You too," I said, and I meant it. I never saw Kara Monroe again. But a month later, I got an email from her with an attachment, an article she'd written about unexplained phenomena in West Texas, focusing on the Marfa area. She'd changed all the names, including mine and hers, and had presented it as a collection of local folklore and eyewitness accounts. Nothing that would make anyone take it seriously as a proof of extraterrestrial contact, but enough that people who'd had similar experiences would recognize the truth in it. The article ended with a simple statement. Whatever we saw in the desert, whatever reached out to us from the darkness, it meant us no harm. It was simply trying, as we all try, to be less alone. 6 months passed after Kara left. 6 months of regular patrols, of watching the night sky, of waiting for the lights to return. They never did. The famous Marfa lights still appeared on the horizon, still danced and glowed for tourists and locals alike. But those other lights, the ones that waited and watched and tried so desperately to communicate, they were gone. I told myself I was relieved. I told myself it was better this way, safer, that I could go back to my normal life of routine patrols and minor disturbances and the comfortable boredom of small-town law enforcement. And for a while, I almost believed it. But something had changed in me that night in the desert. Something fundamental. I found myself driving out to that depression during my off hours, sitting in my truck and staring at the empty sky, remembering the feeling of that alien consciousness touching mine, the profound loneliness I'd felt radiating from beings that had traveled impossible distances only to find they couldn't truly connect with what they'd found. I started researching, not obsessively like Kara had, but consistently. I read every report I could find about UFO encounters in the Southwest, every eyewitness account, every piece of grainy footage and questionable photograph. And I started to see patterns. Most encounters were brief, lights in the sky, objects moving in impossible ways, nothing more. But there were others scattered throughout the decades where people reported the same thing I'd experienced. That feeling of attempted communication, of something reaching out across a vast gulf of difference, trying to make contact. And in almost every case, those people were changed by it. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. They became obsessed with understanding, with finding meaning in what they'd experienced. Some of them, like Kara, devoted their lives to investigation and research. Others retreated from the world, unable to reconcile what they'd seen with the reality they thought they knew. And a few, a very few, simply vanished, like Daniel Monroe. I was careful not to let the obsession consume me. I kept working, kept living my life, kept my research private. But I also kept watching, kept waiting, kept wondering if they'd ever come back. The answer came on a cold November night. I was on patrol, driving the same stretch of Highway 67 where I'd had my first encounter when my radio crackled to life. Dispatch, calling all units, reports of multiple lights seen over the Davis Mountains, unusual movement patterns, possible emergency flares. My heart rate spiked. The Davis Mountains were 30 miles northwest of my position, remote and rugged terrain with very few roads and even fewer people. If something was happening there, if they were back, I needed to be there. Unit 7 responding, I said into the radio, already turning the cruiser around. ETA 25 minutes. I made it in 20. The access road into the Davis Mountains was rough, barely maintained, and my cruiser wasn't really built for off-road driving. But I pushed it as hard as I could, following the coordinates dispatch had given me, heading deeper into the mountains. Other units were there when I arrived. 3 cruisers parked at various angles, their lights off. Officers standing outside their vehicles, staring up at the sky. I got out and joined them, following their gaze. Above us, maybe 1,000 feet up, were 7 lights. Not 3 this time, 7. Arranged in a pattern I'd never seen before, like a constellation that didn't belong. They weren't moving, just hovering there, pulsing gently, and even from this distance I could feel it. That familiar pressure, that presence pressing against my consciousness. "What the hell are those?" asked Deputy Harris, a veteran officer I'd worked with dozens of times. His voice was steady, professional, but I could hear the fear underneath. "I don't know," I lied, "but I'm going to find out." I grabbed a flashlight and started hiking up the trail that led deeper into the mountains. Behind me, I heard Harris call out, telling me to wait, to stay put, that backup was coming. I ignored him because I knew, with that same certainty I'd felt when the lights first led Kara and me into the desert, that these lights were here for a reason. They'd come back, and they'd come back here specifically. The trail was steep and rocky, winding between massive boulders and scrubby trees. The lights followed my progress, drifting along overhead, maintaining their formation. They were leading me somewhere, I realized, just like before. After 20 minutes of climbing, I emerged into a small clearing, a roughly circular space maybe 50 feet across, surrounded by rock formations on 3 sides and open to the valley on the 4th. The lights descended as I entered, dropping down until they were hovering at eye level, surrounding me in a perfect circle. I should have been terrified. Part of me was, but another part, the part that remembered the profound loneliness I'd felt from these beings, felt something else. Anticipation. "Why did you come back?" I asked aloud, my voice sounding small in the mountain silence. "Why now?" The pressure in my head intensified, but it was different this time. More controlled, more focused, and with it came not images or emotions, but something closer to actual words. Not heard, but understood. Because you understood. Because you saw us truly. Because we need your help. "My help?" I said, confused. "How could I possibly help you? I'm just a deputy sheriff in the middle of nowhere. I don't have resources. I don't have power. I don't have anything that could help beings capable of traveling between stars." The lights pulsed, and the pressure shifted, became almost gentle. "You have what we need most. You have the ability to remember, to record, to share. We have learned, finally, after so many attempts, that we cannot connect directly. The bridge is too far, the gap too wide. Every time we try, we harm those we touch, like Daniel Monroe, like others before him." The grief in that statement was overwhelming, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "Then what do you want from me?" I asked. The lights swirled, reforming into a different pattern, and the pressure in my head became words again. Tell our story. Make them understand that we meant no harm, that we came here lonely and desperate and trying to connect, and that we failed, and that we grieve every consciousness we damaged in our attempts. Tell them that we're leaving now, going elsewhere, searching still for those we can truly communicate with. But tell them also that we learned from you, from humans, that sometimes the attempt at connection matters more than the success, that reaching out, even knowing you might fail, is better than remaining forever alone. I don't know if anyone will believe me, I said. I barely have proof. Most people will think I'm crazy. The lights pulsed one more time, and something small and metallic dropped from the central light, landing in the dirt at my feet. I picked it up, a flat disc about the size of a quarter, made of some metal I'd never seen before, engraved with patterns that seemed to shift and change as I looked at them. You have this now, and you have your memories, and you have the truth. That will be enough for those who need to hear it. The lights began to rise, moving upward into the night sky. But before they disappeared completely, one final message pressed into my consciousness. Thank you, Rhett Alvarez. Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for understanding. May you never know the loneliness we have known. And then they were gone, shooting upward so fast they left streaks across my vision, vanishing into the stars like they'd never been there at all. I stood in that clearing for a long time, holding the disc, feeling its weight and texture, knowing that this small piece of metal was the most important object I'd ever hold. Proof. Real proof that something had been here, that I hadn't imagined it all. When I finally hiked back down to where the other deputies were waiting, they peppered me with questions. What had I seen? Where had the lights gone? Was I okay? I told them a simplified version. Unidentified aerial phenomena, possibly drone activity. Lights had dispersed when I investigated, nothing to worry about. It was a weak explanation, but they accepted it because the alternative was too strange, too uncomfortable. But later that night, after my shift ended, I drove to the Paisano Hotel. Not because Kara was there, she'd left months ago, but because I needed to be in a place that remembered. I sat in the parking lot where she'd parked her rental car, where we'd planned our expedition into the desert, and I called her number. She answered on the third ring. Rhett, it's 3 a.m. Is everything okay? They came back, I said simply. Tonight, in the Davis Mountains. 7 of them this time. And they talked to me, Kara, really talked, not just feelings and images, but actual communication. There was a long silence on the other end. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking. What did they say? I told her everything, the message, the apology, the request that we share their story. When I finished, I heard her crying softly. Daniel would have wanted this, she said finally. He would have wanted people to know that they didn't mean to hurt him, that it was an accident born from desperate loneliness. That's who he was, always seeing the best in people, always trying to understand rather than judge. They gave me something, I said, looking down at the disc in my hand. Physical proof, something we can study, something that might help people believe. Mail it to me, she said immediately. I have contacts, researchers who study this stuff seriously. Maybe we can learn something from it. Maybe we can finally start to understand. I mailed the disc to her the next day, carefully packaged and insured, though no amount of insurance could cover what it was actually worth. And then I waited to see what would happen next. 3 weeks later, Kara called me back. The disc is extraordinary, she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice mixed with something deeper, something almost religious. The metal is unlike anything we've seen before, The molecular structure doesn't match any known element. But more than that, there are patterns embedded in it. Information. We're trying to decode it, but so far, we've found what looks like star maps, mathematical formulas, possibly a historical record. A historical record? Of their journey. Where they came from, where they've been, what they've seen. Rhett, this could change everything. This could be the proof humanity needs that we're not alone. That there's intelligent life beyond Earth reaching out to us. But despite Kara's optimism, despite the researchers and the analysis and the slowly growing collection of data, the disk never became the smoking gun we'd hoped for. The scientific community remained skeptical. The media showed brief interest, then moved on to other stories, and the government, when it acknowledged the disk at all, classified it as an artifact of unknown origin and locked it away for further study. The truth, it turned out, was both too big and too subtle for most people to accept. But that didn't matter, not really. Because what the lights had asked me to do wasn't to prove their existence beyond all doubt. It was simply to tell the story, to share what had happened, to make sure that someone remembered and understood. So I'm doing that now. I'm writing this down. Everything that happened, every detail I can remember, so that it exists somewhere outside my own memory. I don't know if anyone will believe it. I don't know if it will change anything. But I know it's true, and I know it matters. There's something else, too. Something I haven't told anyone except Kara. Something I'm almost afraid to put into words. But I'll share it here because it's part of the story. Sometimes, usually late at night when I'm alone, I can still feel them. Not the pressure in my head like before, but a distant awareness. Like sensing someone standing just behind you, even though you can't see them. They're still out there somewhere, still searching for that impossible connection they crave. And every time I feel that distant presence, I try to send them a simple message of my own. Good luck. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you find a way to be less alone. I still work as a deputy sheriff in Presidio County. I still patrol the same roads, drive past the same empty desert, watch the same stars wheel overhead. But everything looks different now. Every light in the sky could be them. Could be other beings traveling vast distances in search of connection. Every strange report, every unexplained sighting could be someone else having the experience I had, receiving that same desperate message. Do you understand? Can you see? Please, we are so alone. And when those reports come in, which they do sometimes, I investigate them seriously. I listen to witnesses carefully without judgment, without skepticism. I take notes, I collect evidence when there is any, and I always believe them. Because I know what it's like to experience something profound and strange, and then have no one take you seriously. The Marfa lights still appear regularly, dancing on the horizon, entertaining tourists and puzzling scientists. Most of them are probably natural phenomena, light refracting through atmospheric layers just like the scientists say. But some of them, maybe, just maybe, are something more. Echoes of visitors who came here once, who tried so hard to connect, and who ultimately had to accept failure and move on. I think about them often, these lonely travelers. I wonder where they are now, what they've seen, if they have finally found others who can understand them. I wonder if they ever think about Earth, about the humans they briefly touched, about the connections they almost made. And sometimes, on very quiet nights when the stars are especially bright and the desert spreads out empty and vast in every direction, I wonder if they miss us as much as I miss them. There's no dramatic conclusion to this story, no final revelation or satisfying ending. The lights came, they tried to communicate, they failed in tragic ways, and they left, that's all. But maybe that's enough. Maybe the lesson isn't about successful contact or irrefutable proof or government disclosure. maybe it's about something simpler and more profound. Maybe it's about recognizing that loneliness is universal, that the need for connection, for understanding, for being truly seen by another consciousness, that need transcends species and planets and the vast, dark distances between stars. We all feel it, human and alien alike. We all reach out in the darkness, hoping someone will reach back. The lights taught me that. They came to Earth desperate and lonely, and hoping for connection. And even though they couldn't bridge the gap, even though their attempts ended in tragedy, the fact that they tried mattered. The fact that they kept searching, kept hoping, kept reaching out despite failure after failure, that was profoundly human in a way I never expected from beings so alien. So, now I do my small part. I tell the story I remember, and I keep watching the skies because you never know. Maybe someday they'll come back. Maybe someday they'll have figured out how to bridge that gap, how to connect without causing harm. Maybe someday we'll look up and see those lights again, and this time we'll be ready. This time we'll understand. Until then, I patrol my roads, I watch my skies, and I remember what it felt like to be touched by something vast and ancient and desperately, profoundly alone. And I hope, wherever they are now, that they've found what they're looking for. This is my testimony, the truth as I experienced it. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. But it happened. All of it. And somewhere out there, under different stars, there are beings who know it happened too. Beings who remember a brief, failed connection with a deputy sheriff in the Texas desert, and who carry that memory with them as they continue their long, lonely search. I'm Rhett Alvarez, and this is what I saw on Marfa Road. This is the truth. My name is Nina Caldwell, and I've been a Texas state trooper for 7 years. I've seen car wrecks that would make you sick, pulled bodies out of the Guadalupe River, dealt with every kind of human darkness you can imagine. I thought I'd seen it all. I thought nothing could shake me anymore. I was wrong. This happened in October of 2021, in the hill country west of San Antonio. You know the area if you're from Texas, rolling hills covered in scrub oak and cedar, limestone cliffs cutting through ranch land, small towns scattered along 2-lane highways where everyone knows everyone and strangers stand out like a sore thumb. It's beautiful country, peaceful country, the kind of place where the most exciting thing that happens is usually a high school football game. That night started normal enough. I was working the evening shift, patrolling State Highway 16 between Medina and Bandera, when dispatch called with a complaint about cattle on the road near a property owned by a man named Bo Harrington. Third time that week, someone had reported loose livestock in that area, which meant I needed to have a talk with Mr. Harrington about fence maintenance. I pulled up the long gravel driveway just after 9 p.m., my headlights cutting through the darkness and dust. The farmhouse was old but well-maintained, white paint glowing in my high beams, a wraparound porch with a swing moving slightly in the hot October wind. Beyond the house, I could see the dark shape of a large barn and several outbuildings. A single yellow porch light was on, and I could see a man sitting in a rocking chair, waiting. Bo Harrington was in his early 60s, I'd guess, lean and weathered in the way of men who'd spent their whole lives working outside. He stood up as I approached, moving slow and careful, hands visible. Smart. Lots of folks out here get nervous around law enforcement, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they value their privacy and their independence. "Evening, officer," he said, his voice carrying that soft, hill country drawl. "I suppose you're here about the cattle." "Yes, sir, Mr. Harrington. We've had 3 reports this week about livestock on the highway near your property. That's a safety hazard, and I need to make sure we get it resolved." He nodded slowly, looking past me toward the road. I know, and I apologize for that. But Trooper Caldwell, those reports, they weren't about my cattle getting loose. My fences are solid. I checked every inch of them twice. Those cattle on the road, they're not mine. Whose are they then? Don't know. That's what's strange about it. Every time someone calls it in, by the time anyone gets there to check, the cattle are gone. No tracks, no sign they were ever there. He paused, then added quietly, and my own cattle, they've been acting strange. I'd grown up on a ranch myself, spent my childhood around livestock, and I knew that cattle were creatures of habit. They didn't just act strange without reason. Strange how? I asked. Bo looked uncomfortable, like he was debating whether to tell me something that might make him sound crazy. Finally, he said, "You want to see them? They're out in the east pasture right now. Been there since sundown, and they haven't moved. Just standing there, all of them, facing the same direction." That got my attention. All of them? How many head are we talking about? 63. Every single one, lined up like soldiers, staring at something I can't see. I should have made my excuses and left. Should have written up a warning about livestock management and moved on to the next call. But something in Bo's voice, a genuine fear underneath the words, made me curious. "Show me," I said. We walked across his property, past the barn, and through a gate into the east pasture. Bo carried a flashlight, sweeping it back and forth across the field, and I kept my hand near my service weapon out of habit, though I wasn't sure what I thought I might need it for. Then I saw them, 63 cattle, just like Bo said, standing perfectly still in the darkness. And they were all facing the same direction, northeast, their bodies aligned like they'd been positioned with a ruler. Not eating, not lying down, not making a sound. Just standing and staring. "How long have they been like this?" I asked, keeping my voice low even though I wasn't sure why. "Started about 3 hours ago, right after sunset. I came out to check on them, and they were already in this formation. I tried to move them, get them to respond, nothing. It's like they're in a trance." I approached the nearest cow slowly, a big Hereford with a white face. I've been around cattle my whole life, and they usually react to human presence, either moving away or showing curiosity. This one didn't even flick an ear. I waved my hand in front of its face. Nothing. Its eyes were open and tracking, but it was like it couldn't see me, like all of its attention was focused on something far away in the direction it was staring. "This isn't natural," I said, and as soon as the words left my mouth, I felt foolish. Of course it wasn't natural. But what else could I say? That the cattle were hypnotized? That something was controlling them? "There's more," Bo said quietly. "Come look at the barn." We walked back across the pasture, and I kept glancing over my shoulder at those motionless cattle, feeling increasingly uneasy. The hot wind had picked up, carrying the smell of dust and hay, and something else, something metallic that I couldn't quite identify. The barn was a massive structure, probably built in the 30s or 40s, with high walls and a metal roof that rattled slightly in the wind. Bo led me around to the side facing northeast, the same direction the cattle were staring, and pointed up at the roof. "Watch," he said, and turned off his flashlight. For a moment I couldn't see anything in the sudden darkness. Then my eyes adjusted and I saw it, a faint glow on the barn roof, barely visible, like moonlight reflecting off the metal. Except there was no moon tonight. The sky was overcast, thick clouds blocking out the stars. "You see it?" Bo asked. "I see it. Could be a reflection from something. Maybe a light from a nearby property." "No nearby properties for 3 miles in that direction. Nothing but empty ranch land and the Barksdale Air Force Base 15 miles out." The glow pulsed slightly, getting brighter for a moment, then dimmer, like something breathing. I pulled out my flashlight and aimed it at the roof, clicking it on. The beam illuminated the metal clearly, showing rust spots and bird droppings and nothing that should be glowing. "Turn it off," Bo said urgently. "Turn off your light and watch." I hesitated, then did as he asked. The moment my flashlight went dark, the glow on the roof intensified. Not dramatically, but noticeably, like whatever was causing it was reacting to the absence of artificial light. "Jesus," I muttered. My skin was crawling now, that primal instinct that tells you something is very wrong even when you can't articulate what it is. I pulled out my phone to take a picture, but when I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. The time was wrong, very wrong. My phone said it was 7:47 p.m., but I knew it had been after 9 when I arrived. I'd checked the time multiple times during my patrol before getting the call about Bo's property. "Check your phone," I said to Bo, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. He pulled it out of his pocket, looked at the screen, and went pale. "It says 7:30, but that's impossible. It was 8:45 when you got here. I checked because I was going to call the sheriff's department if no one showed up by 9. We stood there in the darkness, both of us staring at our phones like they were bombs about to go off. The glow on the barn roof pulsed again, brighter this time, and I felt something I'd never felt in 7 years of law enforcement. Pure animal terror. "We need to call this in," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Get some backup out here, maybe someone from the Air Force Base to check for unusual activity." But when I tried to make the call, my phone wouldn't connect. No signal, even though I'd had full bars when I pulled up the driveway. Bo tried his phone with the same result. "Trooper Caldwell," Bo said slowly, his eyes fixed on something behind me. "Don't move fast, but turn around slowly and look at the cattle." I turned. All 63 cattle had moved. Silently, without us hearing a single hoofbeat, they'd repositioned themselves. They were closer now, maybe 100 feet away instead of the 300 feet they'd been when we left the pasture. And they were still staring in that same direction, still perfectly aligned, still completely silent. "They followed us," Bo whispered, "or moved to keep watching whatever they're watching. Nina, I've been raising cattle for 40 years, and I've never seen anything like this." The glow on the roof pulsed again, and this time I noticed something else. The shadows it cast were wrong. When light hits an object, the shadows should fall away from the light source. But these shadows, the ones cast by the barn's weather vane and the edges of the roof, they were falling toward the light, like the glow was somehow pulling darkness into itself instead of pushing it away. "We need to get inside," I said, my training finally kicking in past the fear. "Your house, now. We'll barricade the doors and try to figure out what's happening." But Bo wasn't listening. He was staring up at the sky above the barn, his mouth slightly open, and when I followed his gaze, I understood why. The clouds were moving wrong, not being blown by wind, but rotating, slowly spinning in a perfect circle directly above Bo's property. And in the center of that rotation, barely visible against the dark sky, was something darker. Something solid, something huge. "Oh God," Bo breathed. "Oh God, it's real. It's actually real." The glow on the barn roof suddenly flared bright, bright enough to hurt my eyes, bright enough to cast harsh shadows across the entire property. And in that moment of brightness, I saw something that made my knees weak. There were shapes on the roof, not standing on it, but somehow part of the light itself. Silhouettes that looked almost human but wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. Too tall, too thin, limbs that bent at angles that didn't match human anatomy. And they were looking at us. I don't know how I knew they were looking at us, considering they were just dark shapes in the light, but I knew it with absolute certainty. They were aware of us, studying us, and the weight of their attention was crushing. My hand went to my service weapon and I actually drew it, pointing it at shapes made of light on a barn roof. Completely irrational, completely useless, but it made me feel slightly less helpless. "Inside," I said again, more forcefully this time. "Bo, we need to move. Now." This time he listened. We backed toward his house, neither of us willing to turn our backs on the barn, on those shapes, on the massive dark thing hanging in the sky. The cattle watched us go, still motionless, still silent. We made it to the porch, then through the front door. Bo slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt, then went around checking all the windows, making sure they were locked. I followed him, my weapon still drawn, trying to think through the training I'd received for every possible emergency scenario. None of that training covered this. "Do you have any weapons?" I asked Bo. "Shotgun in the bedroom. Rifle in the hall closet. You think we're going to need them?" "I don't know, but I'd rather have them and not need them." Bo retrieved both weapons, loading them with practiced efficiency. We positioned ourselves in the living room, where we could see multiple windows and had a clear view of the front door. The house was dark except for a single lamp, and outside, that strange glow from the barn was now visible through the windows, pulsing steadily. "What are they?" Bo asked quietly. "Those shapes, that thing in the sky. What are we dealing with here?" I wanted to say I didn't know, which was true, but I also couldn't lie to this man who was trapped in this situation because of bad luck and geography. So I said the thing we were both thinking, but neither of us wanted to say aloud. "I think we're looking at some kind of non-human intelligence, UFO, alien, whatever you want to call it. And I think they've been using your property for something. Maybe that's why the cattle have been acting strange, why your animals keep showing up in reports only to disappear." "Jesus Christ," Bo muttered. "I thought people who believed in this stuff were crazy. I thought it was all conspiracy theories and attention seekers." "So did I admitted. We sat in tense silence for maybe 5 minutes, watching the glow outside pulse and brighten. Then my radio crackled to life, making both of us jump. "Unit 42, what's your status?" It was dispatch, the signal weak but audible. I grabbed the radio, relief flooding through me. Communication was restored. "Dispatch, this is Unit 42. I'm at the Harrington property and we have a situation. Unknown aerial phenomenon. Possible threat. Requesting immediate backup and notification to nearby military installations." There was a long pause, then, "Unit 42, please clarify. Did you say aerial phenomenon?" "Affirmative. Large object in the sky, unusual behavior from livestock, electronics malfunctioning. I need backup now." Another pause, longer this time, then a different voice, male and authoritative. "Trooper Caldwell, this is Sergeant Morrison. Can you describe what you're seeing in more detail?" I described everything. The cattle, the glow, the shapes, the time distortion on our phones, the rotating clouds. As I spoke, I could hear the skepticism in the silence on the other end of the radio. "Trooper Caldwell," Morrison said finally, "I'm dispatching 2 units to your location. ETA approximately 20 minutes. In the meantime, remain inside the structure and do not attempt to engage with whatever you're observing. Do you understand?" "Understood. But Sergeant, you need to contact Barksdale Air Force Base. If there's something in the air over hill country, they need to know about it." "I'll make the call. Stay safe, Caldwell. Help is on the way." The radio went silent again, and Bo and I looked at each other. 20 minutes. We had to hold out for 20 minutes, and then help would arrive. Then maybe we'd get some answers. Maybe someone would show up who knew how to deal with this. But as I watched the glow outside brighten again, As I heard a sound like wind chimes coming from somewhere that didn't have wind chimes, I had a terrible feeling that 20 minutes might be too long, or not long enough. The temperature in the house began to drop, not like turning down the thermostat, but suddenly, drastically. I could see my breath fogging in the air, could feel the cold seeping into my bones. Bo noticed it too, wrapping his arms around himself. "That's not natural," he said through chattering teeth. "It's 85 degrees outside. How is it this cold in here?" I didn't have an answer. I moved to the window, looking out at the barn, and what I saw made my blood run even colder than the temperature in the room. The shapes were moving, gliding down from the barn roof, their silhouettes visible against that pulsing glow, and they were coming toward the house. "Bo," I said quietly, "get away from the windows, now." We moved to the center of the living room, back to back, weapons raised. The cold was intense now, painful, my fingers stiff and clumsy on my service weapon. Outside, I could hear footsteps on the porch, not heavy but light, almost delicate, like something walking on the tips of its feet. The front door handle began to turn. "State Police!" I shouted, my voice hoarse. "Do not attempt to enter. This property is under law enforcement protection." The handle stopped turning. Silence stretched out, broken only by our ragged breathing and the sound of wind chimes that shouldn't exist. Then something hit the door. Hard. Hard enough to crack the wood, to make the frame shudder. Bo and I both aimed our weapons at the door, fingers on triggers, waiting for whatever was coming. But it didn't come in. Instead, the pressure in my head started again. That same sensation I'd read about in those UFO reports I'd studied after encountering similar stories during investigations. A pushing, probing pressure, like something was trying to reach into my mind and sort through my thoughts. "Do you feel that?" I asked Bo. "Feel what?" "In your head. A pressure. Like someone pushing." He shook his head, confused, and I realized whatever was happening was directed at me specifically. Maybe because I was law enforcement. Maybe because I was the outsider. Maybe for reasons I couldn't begin to understand. The pressure intensified, and suddenly I wasn't in Bo's living room anymore. I was standing in a field. Not Bo's pasture, but somewhere else entirely, somewhere that felt wrong. The grass was too uniform, too perfect, like astroturf. The sky was a weird purple-gray color that hurt to look at. And in the distance I could see structures that might have been buildings, if buildings could be grown instead of built. Organic shapes that curved and twisted in ways that defied geometry. Nina Caldwell. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, not heard with my ears but somehow understood directly by my brain. Texas State Trooper, age 31. Born in Fredericksburg, currently stationed in Uvalde. "Why are you here?" I tried to speak, to explain that this was Bo's property and I was investigating a complaint, but my mouth wouldn't move. Instead, my thoughts seemed to answer directly. Responding to a call. "Livestock on the highway. This is my jurisdiction." Jurisdiction. The word was tasted, examined, turned over like a strange object. A concept of territory and authority. We understand territory. We do not understand why one of your kind would enter danger for the concept of authority. It's my job, my duty. Job, duty. More tasting, more examining. You perform dangerous tasks in exchange for currency and social status. But the danger here exceeds your compensation. Why do you remain? I thought about that. About why I hadn't run the moment I saw those shapes on the barn roof. Why I'd stayed with Bo instead of fleeing to safety. The answer came from somewhere deep, somewhere honest. Because he's scared. Because leaving him alone would be wrong. because someone has to stand between people and the things that threaten them. There was a long silence. If silence can exist in a place without sound, then, interesting. You are a protector. We have encountered protectors before, in many forms across many worlds, but you are small, soft, fragile. Your weapons are primitive. You cannot actually protect against us. Yet you remain. Why? Because giving up isn't an option. Another pause, longer this time. The purple-gray sky shifted, became darker, and I felt something massive moving in that darkness, studying me with an intelligence that made human consciousness seem like a candle flame compared to a forest fire. "You are curious," the voice said, and it sounded almost pleased. "Good. Curiosity we understand. Curiosity is why we are here, why we travel between stars, why we observe species like yours. You want to know what we are, yes?" "Yes," I thought, because I couldn't lie, not here, not in whatever place this was. "We are travelers, seekers, students of life in all its forms. Your world is young, your species barely emerging from its cradle, but you show potential. We watch, we study. Sometimes we interact, briefly, carefully. Sometimes we take samples." "Samples? You mean abductions? Taking people?" "Taking. Another concept we taste and examine. We do not take in the way you mean. We borrow. We observe. We record. And we return what we borrow, usually unchanged, sometimes enhanced. Your brother Daniel, the one from the previous story you carry in your memory, he was borrowed. He was damaged by the process, yes. We regret this. Our methods have improved since then." I felt anger flash through me, hot and bright. "You don't get to borrow people. We're not objects, we're living beings with rights and autonomy." Rights, autonomy, more concepts we struggle to comprehend. You are biological entities following chemical imperatives, performing actions determined by genetics and environment. Where is the autonomy in that? Where are the rights? We're conscious. We make choices. We matter. You matter to each other, perhaps, but in the vast scope of the universe, in the endless stretches of time, does your species truly matter? Does any species matter except as data points in the grand study of existence? The question should have been crushing, nihilistic, but instead I felt something else. Defiance. We matter because we choose to matter, because we love and fight and create and protect each other. Maybe we're small and fragile and temporary, but we're real. And no amount of cosmic perspective changes that. The massive presence in the darkness shifted again, and I sensed something like surprise, or maybe approval. "You are interesting, Nina Caldwell, more interesting than most we encounter. Most of your kind responds with fear or aggression or a desperate need to understand. You respond with assertion of value. This is rare. This is worth studying." "I'm not going to be your study subject," I thought fiercely. "You already are. You became our study subject the moment you entered Bowden Harrington's property. But perhaps the study can be collaborative. Perhaps you can help us understand your species better, and in exchange, we can answer some of your questions. What questions could I possibly want answered by beings who treat people like lab rats? Questions about your place in the universe, about whether you are alone, about what happens to consciousness after death, about the nature of time and space and reality itself. We can show you truths that your species won't discover for thousands of years, if you ever discover them at all." It was tempting, God help me, it was incredibly tempting. But I thought about Bo, waiting in his living room with a shotgun, terrified and alone. I thought about those cattle standing in formation, trapped in whatever this thing was doing. I thought about my duty, my job, my purpose, I don't want your truths, I thought. I want you to leave. Leave this property, leave these people alone, go study someone else somewhere else. We cannot do that. The study is not complete. We need more data, more observations. We need to understand the phenomenon of protective behavior in your species, the willingness to sacrifice for others. We need to see how far that willingness extends. And suddenly, I was back in Beau's living room, gasping for breath, the cold air burning my lungs. Beau was shaking me, his face pale with fear. Nina, can you hear me? You've been standing there for 20 minutes, not moving, not responding. I thought you were dead. 20 minutes. It had felt like seconds, maybe a minute at most. Time distortion, just like our phones. Whatever these things were, they could manipulate perception, could trap people in conversations that happened outside normal time. The pounding on the door had stopped. The house was still freezing cold, but the pressure in my head was gone. I moved to the window, careful to stay to the side, and looked out. The barn was dark. No glow, no shapes, nothing. The clouds had stopped rotating, and I could see stars now through gaps in the overcast sky. And the cattle, I could just barely make them out in the darkness, were scattered across the pasture, grazing normally like nothing had happened. "It's gone," I whispered. "Whatever it was, it left." "What happened to you?" Beau asked. "Where did you go?" "I don't know exactly. Somewhere else. Whatever those things are, they pulled me into some kind of communication. Wanted to study me, understand me, asked questions about why I stayed, why I protect people." "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that it's my job, that leaving you alone would be wrong." I checked my phone. The time was correct now, showing 9:47 p.m. Still no signal, though. "They said the study isn't complete. Said they need more data. Beau, I think they're coming back." "When?" "They didn't say, but it's not over. Whatever they're doing here, whatever they're trying to understand, they're not finished." Headlights appeared in the distance, coming up the long driveway. Multiple vehicles. The backup I'd called for, finally arriving. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt dread. Because how was I going to explain this? How was I going to write a report about what had happened here without sounding insane? The answer was simple. I couldn't. 2 state trooper vehicles pulled up, followed by a sheriff's department cruiser. 4 officers got out, flashlights sweeping the property, hands near their weapons. I recognized 2 of them, Trooper James Kelso and Deputy Sandra Martinez, both good cops, both professionals. I met them at the door, Beau standing behind me with his shotgun lowered but still held ready. "Caldwell," Kelso said, his eyes scanning me for injuries. "What's the situation?" "Your radio call said something about an aerial phenomenon." "It's gone now," I said carefully. "But we had multiple unusual occurrences, electronic malfunctions, strange lights, atmospheric effects. Mr. Harrington's livestock was behaving abnormally, and we both experienced what I can only describe as possible exposure to some kind of unknown technology." Martinez was writing in her notepad, her expression skeptical. "Unknown technology? Can you be more specific?" "No," I admitted. "I can't. I don't know what it was, but it was real. It was here, and it left physical evidence." I gestured toward the barn. "Check the roof. There should be some kind of residue or energy signature from whatever was producing that light." Kelso and Martinez exchanged glances, the kind of look that said they thought I'd lost my mind, but they were professional enough not to say it out loud. "We'll do a thorough sweep of the property," Kelso said. "In the meantime, why don't you and Mr. Harrington come sit in one of the cruisers where it's safe and warm?" Safe. Warm. Like sitting in a car would protect us from beings that could manipulate time and reach into people's minds. But I didn't argue. I was exhausted. My head ached, and the cold had seeped so deep into my bones, I wasn't sure I'd ever be warm again. Bo and I sat in the back of Kelso's cruiser while the other officers searched the property. They checked the barn, the pastures, the house, everything. They took photographs, measured things, looked for evidence of whatever I'd reported. And they found nothing. No residue on the barn roof, no physical traces, no explanation for the cattle's behavior or the electronic malfunctions. After 2 hours, they were ready to leave. Kelso came over to the cruiser, his expression carefully neutral. "Caldwell, we didn't find anything that supports what you described in your report. No evidence of aircraft, no unusual energy readings, nothing. Mr. Harrington's cattle appear healthy and normal. His fences are secure. There's no indication of any threat." "What about the time distortion? Both our phones showed incorrect times. That has to be documented somewhere. Could be a localized electromagnetic pulse, maybe from a passing aircraft or military test. Happens sometimes out here near the Air Force Base. Nothing to worry about." "And the temperature drop? The house was freezing, James. You can still feel it if you go inside. Old houses get cold at night, especially with the wind. Could have been a draft." He was giving me an out, I realized. A way to walk back my report, to explain away what had happened as a series of mundane events misinterpreted in the stress of the moment. And part of me wanted to take that out, to nod and agree and pretend that everything could be explained rationally. But I couldn't, because it had been real, all of it. "I'm standing by my report," I said firmly. "Something was here, something non-standard, and Mr. Harrington can corroborate everything I saw." Kelso looked at Bo, who nodded. "She's telling the truth. All of it happened exactly like she said." "All right," Kelso said after a long pause. "I'll file the report as submitted. But Nina, you need to be prepared for follow-up questions. This is going to raise flags all the way up the chain. They might want you to undergo a psychological evaluation. Make sure you're fit for duty." "I'm fit for duty, but I appreciate the heads up." The other officers left, their taillights disappearing down the driveway, and I was alone with Bo again. The property was quiet now, peaceful, like nothing had ever happened. But we both knew better. "What do we do now?" Bo asked quietly. "You keep your doors locked, your shotgun loaded, and your phone charged. If anything else happens, you call me directly, not dispatch. I'll come immediately, no questions asked. And if they come back when you're not here, then you do what you did tonight. Stay inside, don't engage, and wait for help. But Bo, I need you to understand something. If they come back, if they want to take you, to study you, there might not be anything I or anyone else can do to stop them." He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at his dark property. Finally, he said, "My grandfather used to tell stories about lights in the sky when he was young, back in the 40s. Said things would hover over the ranch land, watching, waiting. Most folks thought he was crazy or drunk, but he swore it was real, swore they were looking for something." "Did he ever say what they were looking for?" "Understanding, maybe. Or maybe they were looking for people who'd understand them. I don't know. He died before I was old enough to ask the right questions." I thought about the voice in my head, the massive intelligence that had studied me like I was an interesting insect. Understanding, that's what it had wanted, what it had said they all wanted. Understanding of human consciousness, of our capacity for sacrifice and protection and love. "I think they're still looking," I said quietly. "And I think they found something interesting here. In you, in your cattle, in this property. I don't know why, but they're going to come back. How do you know? Because the voice told me. The study isn't complete. Bo shuddered. Then I guess we wait, and we watch, and we pray we're ready when they return. I stayed with Bo until dawn, both of us taking turns sleeping while the other kept watch. Nothing else happened that night. No lights, no shapes, no voices in my head. Just a quiet Texas night with crickets chirping and a hot wind rustling through the scrub oak. When the sun rose, painting the hill country in shades of gold and amber, I finally allowed myself to believe we'd made it through. I said goodbye to Bo, promising again to come immediately if he needed me, and drove back to my station to file my official report. The next 2 weeks were hell. The report I filed set off exactly the kind of alarm bells Kelso had warned me about. I was called in for a psychological evaluation, questioned extensively about what I'd seen and experienced, asked to submit to a drug test to rule out intoxication. I passed everything, but I could see the doubt in people's eyes. The unspoken question, had Trooper Caldwell finally cracked under the pressure? My sergeant didn't suspend me, but he did recommend I take a week of personal time, get some rest, clear my head. I refused, because I knew that if I stepped away, if I wasn't available when Bo called, something terrible might happen. And 3 weeks after the first incident, Bo called. "Nina," his voice was tight with fear. "They're back. The cattle are doing it again, all lined up, staring. And there's something on the barn roof. I can see the glow. I'm on my way, 20 minutes. Stay inside, lock your doors, and don't go out no matter what you hear or see. Nina, there's something else, my phone, the time, it's wrong again. It says 6:15, but I know it's after 8. I know it's them. It's starting again. Just hold on, I'm coming." I broke every speed limit getting to Bo's property, my heart pounding, my mind racing. This time, I was prepared. I had my service weapon, extra ammunition, a high-powered flashlight, and a video camera I'd purchased with my own money, determined to get evidence that couldn't be disputed. The sun was setting as I pulled up the driveway, the sky turning orange and purple. And there they were, all 63 cattle, standing in perfect formation, staring northeast toward the barn. The sight sent chills down my spine despite the heat. Bo met me at the door, his face gray with fear. "It's worse this time. The glow is brighter, and I swear, Nina, I swear I heard voices outside. Not English, not any language I recognize, but voices. They're out there. Show me." We moved through the house to the back window, and I saw it immediately. The barn roof was glowing, pulsing with that same eerie light, but brighter this time, almost luminous. And in that glow, I could see the shapes. More of them now, maybe 6 or 7, moving across the roof with that same impossible fluidity. I pulled out my camera and started recording, my hands shaking with adrenaline. "State your name and the date," I said, keeping my voice steady for the recording. "Trooper Nina Caldwell, November 8th, 2021, approximately 8:30 p.m. I'm at the property of Bowden Harrington in Hill Country, and I am documenting unusual aerial and electromagnetic phenomena." I aimed the camera at the barn, at the glowing roof, at those moving shapes. Through the viewfinder I could see them clearly, but when I played back the footage my stomach dropped. The barn was there, the roof was there, but the glow, the shapes, nothing. Just a normal barn in the evening light. "No," I whispered. "No, not again. They can't just erase themselves from evidence." "Nina," Bo said quietly, "look at the cattle." They were moving, all of them in unison, walking slowly toward the house. Not running, not stampeding, just walking with that same eerie coordination, their eyes still fixed on something behind us. I spun around, looking back toward the barn, and my breath caught. One of the shapes had separated from the others. It was descending from the roof, floating down with arms outstretched, and it was coming toward the house. Toward us. "Get back from the window," I commanded, pulling Bo away from the glass. My hand went to my service weapon, drawing it in one smooth motion that was pure muscle memory. "We need to barricade the doors, now." But even as I said it, I knew it was futile. These beings, whatever they were, could manipulate time and space, could reach into minds, could make themselves invisible to cameras. A locked door wasn't going to stop them if they really wanted to get in. The shape continued its descent, moving with that same disturbing grace. In the growing darkness, I could see it more clearly now. The elongated body, the two long limbs, the head that was shaped wrong for anything human. It touched down on the ground maybe 30 feet from the house and stopped, waiting. "What does it want?" Bo whispered. The pressure in my head started again, that familiar pushing sensation, but gentler this time, almost tentative. And with it came a feeling, an emotion that wasn't mine, curiosity mixed with something that felt like respect. "It wants to talk," I said, surprised by my own certainty. "It's not here to hurt us, it's here to continue the conversation from before." "The hell with conversation," Bo said, his hands tight on his shotgun. "Tell it to get off my property." But I found myself moving toward the door, my hand reaching for the handle. Part of me was screaming to stop, to stay inside where it was safe. But another part, the part that had chosen to become a trooper, that had dedicated my life to understanding and protecting, that part was curious. "Nina, don't," Bo said urgently. "Don't go out there." "I have to. If I don't, they'll just keep coming back, keep studying us without giving us anything in return. At least, this way I can try to negotiate, try to establish some kind of boundary. They're not human. How do you negotiate with something that sees us as lab specimens? The same way you negotiate with anything, by asserting value and demanding respect." I holstered my weapon, a gesture of non-aggression that felt insane even as I did it. "Stay inside. If something happens to me, if I don't come back, you call Kelso and tell him everything. Make sure someone knows the truth." "Nina." But I was already opening the door, stepping out onto the porch into the hot October night. The air felt thick, electric, like the moment before a thunderstorm. The cattle had stopped their advance and were now standing motionless again, watching, and the shape, the being, waited for me at the edge of the porch light's reach. Up close, it was both more and less frightening than I'd expected. More frightening because I could see details I hadn't noticed before. The way its skin seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The way its eyes were just dark voids that somehow still conveyed intelligence and emotion. Less frightening because there was something in its posture, in the way it held itself, that suggested peaceful intent. "You came out," the voice said in my head, that same genderless, ageless tone. "We did not think you would. Most of your kind remain behind barriers when we approach. Most of my kind haven't been pulled into your weird purple field for a conversation," I said aloud, not caring if it could understand spoken words or only read thoughts. "You said the study wasn't complete. What else do you need? What do you want from us?" "To understand the mechanism of protective behavior. You are not related to Bodan Harrington by genetics or social bonds. You gain no survival advantage by protecting him. Yet, you do so anyway, even at risk to yourself. This fascinates us. This is the key to your species' unusual success despite your physical limitations. It's called empathy, caring about others even when they're not family or friends. It's how societies function, how civilizations get built. We protect each other because we're all in this together. Empathy. Yes, we have studied this concept through observation, but observation is insufficient. We need to understand the experience of empathy, the subjective feeling that motivates the action, and to do that we need to test it. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Test it how? The being raised one long arm, pointing past me toward the house where Bo was watching through the window. We wish to study Bowden Harrington more closely, to take him temporarily, observe his responses to various stimuli, document his consciousness patterns. The process will take approximately 47 of your days. He will be returned unharmed, potentially enhanced. No, I said flatly. Absolutely not. You don't get to take him. You don't get to take anyone. But the study requires it. We have observed from distance, we have scanned from above, we have monitored electromagnetic patterns. But to truly understand human consciousness, we need direct access. Bowden Harrington is an ideal subject. He lives alone, few social connections. His absence would cause minimal disruption. His absence would cause disruption to him. He's a person, not a research subject. He has rights, autonomy, the right to refuse to be part of your experiment. Rights, autonomy. You return to these concepts, but consider, we could take him regardless of your objections. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your laws do not apply to us. Your government has no power to stop us. We offer you the courtesy of explanation because you interest us, but we do not require your permission. The fear in my stomach turned to anger, hot and bright. Then why are we having this conversation? Why explain anything if you're just going to do what you want anyway? Because you asked. Because you came outside to face us rather than hiding. Because you demonstrate the very quality we wish to study. And because... The being paused, seemed to consider its words. Because we have learned that taking without consent creates incomplete data. Subjects who are taken unwillingly respond differently than those who participate voluntarily. Their consciousness patterns are distorted by fear and resistance. We prefer volunteers. Then I volunteer, I said, the words out of my mouth before I'd fully thought them through. Instead of Bo, take me for your study. I'm a better subject anyway, trained observer, better able to articulate experiences, probably more interesting data. The being tilted its head, and I felt the pressure in my mind intensify as it examined my offer. Interesting. You offer yourself in exchange for his safety. This is the protective behavior we wish to study, but experiencing it from inside would provide better data than observing it from outside. So, we have a deal? You take me, you leave Bo alone, and after your 47 days you bring me back unharmed? The physical body will be unharmed, yes. The consciousness, the being seemed uncertain. We have improved our methods since Daniel Monroe. We have learned to be more careful, but the process of deep consciousness study inevitably creates changes. You may not return exactly as you are now. Changes how? Be specific. Enhanced pattern recognition, expanded sensory perception, possible temporal awareness beyond linear progression. Some subjects report difficulty reintegrating into normal social structures after exposure to our perspective of reality. But no physical damage, no loss of core identity. I thought about it, weighing the risks against the alternative of letting them take Bo. An older man, set in his ways, pulled into their study against his will, possibly damaged like Daniel Monroe had been damaged, versus me, younger, trained to handle stress, volunteering to be a bridge between species. 47 days, I said. And you bring me back to this exact location, to Bo's property, no matter what condition I'm in. And you leave this area alone after that. No more studies of his cattle, No more visits, no more disturbances. This property becomes off-limits to your research. The being considered this acceptable, but we require verification that you are sincere, not simply delaying to allow escape or reinforcements. Open your mind to us. Let us see your true intentions. I didn't know how to open my mind intentionally, so I just thought about Bo, about the fear on his face, about my duty to protect civilians, about my willingness to sacrifice my comfort and safety if it meant keeping someone else from harm. I thought about empathy, about connection, about the value of every individual consciousness. The pressure in my head swelled, became almost painful, and then receded. We see truth in you. We accept your offer. The exchange will occur now. Wait, I said, panic suddenly flooding through me. Now? I need time to prepare, to tell people where I'm going, time is the one thing we cannot give. The study window is optimal now. Atmospheric conditions, gravitational alignment, electromagnetic background noise. All factors are correct for safe transport and observation. If we delay, these conditions will not recur for many of your years. I looked back at the house, at Bo's face in the window, pale and frightened. I pulled out my phone, quickly typing a text message to Kelso. At Harrington Property, taking voluntary action to resolve situation. We'll explain everything in 47 days. Please check on Bo, he'll need support. Not a breakdown, not a joke. Real, trust me. Nina. I hit send, hoping the message would get through whatever interference these beings created, hoping someone would believe me, hoping I wasn't making the worst mistake of my life. I'm ready, I said, though I wasn't, would never be, could never be truly ready for what was about to happen. The being extended its arm toward me, and I saw that its hand, if you could call it that, had too many fingers, each one ending in what looked like a point of light. Take my appendage. The transfer will be instantaneous from your perspective. I reached out, my hand shaking, and touched one of those points of light. The world dissolved. I was in the purple-gray field again, that impossible place with the organic structures and the wrong sky. But this time I wasn't alone. There were others here, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, beings of different shapes and sizes moving through the space with purpose. And above it all, I felt that massive intelligence, that presence that had spoken to me before, watching everything with patient curiosity. "Welcome, Nina Caldwell," the voice said. And now I could tell it wasn't coming from one being, but from all of them. A collective consciousness speaking as one. "Welcome to the study. Thank you for volunteering. Your participation will help us understand your species better, will perhaps help bridge the gap between your kind and ours." "How long will it feel like?" I asked, or thought, or however communication worked in this place. "You said 47 days in my time, but how long will it feel like for me?" Time flows differently here. The 47 days may feel like minutes, or years, or both simultaneously. But when you return, your body will show only 47 days of aging. We promise this. I wanted to ask more questions, wanted to understand what was about to happen, but I could already feel myself being pulled deeper into this place, my consciousness fragmenting and reforming, being examined and documented from every angle. The last coherent thought I had before losing myself in the study was a hope that Bo was okay, that my message had gotten through, that someone would remember what had happened here. And then there was only the study, endless and eternal and gone in an instant. When I woke up, I was lying in grass. Real grass, earth grass, not the too perfect synthetic stuff from that other place. The sun was shining, warm on my face, and I could hear birds singing. Normal sounds, earth sounds, sounds that meant I was home. I sat up slowly, my body aching like I'd been sleeping on the ground for days. I was back at Beau's property, in the east pasture where the cattle had stood in formation. The cattle were there now, grazing normally, completely ignoring me. How long had it been? I checked my phone, the battery somehow still charged. The date made my heart sink. December 25th, 2021, Christmas Day. 47 days, exactly as promised, but those 47 days had passed in what felt like both a few minutes and several lifetimes. I stumbled toward the house, my legs weak and uncoordinated. Beau must have seen me coming because he burst out of the door, running toward me with an expression of relief and disbelief. "Nina, oh God, Nina, you're back. You're actually back." He grabbed me before I could fall, supporting my weight. "Are you hurt? Do you need a doctor? Everyone's been looking for you. The whole state police force, the FBI, even Air Force investigators. We all thought, "I'm okay," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. My mind felt too big for my skull, like I was perceiving too much, processing information in ways I'd never done before. Colors looked different. Sounds had textures, and I could almost see the flow of time itself. Could sense the past and future bleeding into the present moment. "What did they do to you?" Beau asked, helping me into the house. "They studied me, my consciousness, my thought patterns, my experiences. They wanted to understand empathy, understand why humans protect each other. And I think..." I paused, trying to articulate something that didn't have words in any human language. "I think they learned something. About us, about themselves, about the possibility of real communication between different kinds of consciousness." "Did it hurt?" "No, but it changed me. I can feel it, Beau. I'm not quite the same person who left here 47 days ago. My perception is different. I see connections, patterns, things that were always there but I couldn't notice before." Over the next few hours, as Beau made calls to notify everyone I'd returned, I started to understand the scope of what my disappearance had caused. A massive search and rescue operation. Federal investigators demanding answers. My family frantic with worry. My career potentially over because who would trust a trooper who vanished for 47 days with no explanation except I was voluntarily abducted by aliens for scientific study. But I also found that my text message had gotten through. Kelso had received it, had shown it to others. Some people thought I'd had a breakdown and run away. Others suspected foul play. But a small number, including Kelso himself, had taken my words seriously. They'd monitored Beau's property, documented the strange lights and electromagnetic anomalies, collected evidence that something unusual was happening here. It wasn't proof, not the smoking gun that would make everyone believe, but it was something, a record, a testament that I hadn't simply disappeared. I'd gone somewhere, done something important, and returned as promised. When I finally made my official statement to investigators, I told them the truth. All of it, the beings, the study, the voluntary exchange. Some of them thought I was delusional or covering for a more mundane explanation. But others, the ones who'd seen things they couldn't explain, who'd investigated cases that didn't fit the normal patterns, they listened carefully. And in the end, I was allowed to keep my badge. Officially, I'd experienced a dissociative episode brought on by stress and was required to undergo counseling. Unofficially, I was told to keep my mouth shut about aliens and UFOs if I wanted to keep my job. I agreed to both conditions, because the truth was, I didn't need to convince everyone. The people who mattered, the ones who'd experienced similar things or who were open to the possibility, they already believed me. 3 months later, I was back on patrol in the hill country. My perceptions had stabilized somewhat, though I still saw patterns others couldn't see. Still felt the flow of time in ways that were distinctly non-human. But I'd learned to live with it, to use it even, finding missing persons more easily, sensing danger before it manifested, understanding situations with an intuition that bordered on precognition. And I kept my promise to check on Bo. I visited him regularly, made sure he was doing okay, that the beings had kept their promise to leave his property alone. The cattle never stood in formation again. The glow on the barn roof never returned. Whatever study they'd been conducting was complete. On a warm spring evening, I sat with Bo on his porch, watching the sunset over the hill country. The sky was turning orange and purple, and for a moment I thought I saw something moving among the stars. But when I blinked, it was gone. "Do you think they're still out there?" Bo asked, "watching us? Studying other people?" "Probably," I said. "They came from so far away, invested so much time and resources in understanding us. They're not going to just give up because one study is complete. Does that scare you?" I thought about it, about those 47 days, about the massive intelligence that had examined every corner of my consciousness. It should have scared me. It should have traumatized me. But instead, I felt something else. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't scare me, because they're not cruel, not evil, just curious. Just trying to understand the universe in all its forms. And maybe someday, if we're lucky, we'll understand them too. Maybe someday we'll be ready for real contact, real communication, real partnership between species. You sound like you're defending them. Maybe I am. They kept their promise. They returned me, kept you safe, left this area alone. That's more than most humans would do in their position." Bo was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You know what the strangest part of all this is? I'm not even sure it happened. I mean, I know it did, I saw it, I lived it. But sometimes I wake up and wonder if it was all just a strange dream." "I know the feeling," I said. "But whether anyone else believes it or not, we know the truth, and that has to be enough." The sun dropped below the horizon, and the hill country descended into darkness. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the solar system, beyond distances my human mind could barely comprehend, they were still traveling, still searching, still trying to understand the infinite varieties of consciousness scattered across the universe. And here I was, a Texas state trooper with slightly too much perception and slightly too little sanity, carrying inside me the memory of 47 days that might change everything, or might mean nothing, depending on who you asked. But I knew what it meant to me. It meant we weren't alone. It meant the universe was stranger and more wonderful than we'd ever imagined. It meant that sometimes the only way to protect someone is to volunteer for the danger yourself. And it meant that somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, there were beings who understood, finally, what it meant to be human. Or at least, they were starting to. My name is Nina Caldwell. I'm a Texas state trooper. And this is what happened to me in Hill Country in October of 2021. Every word is true. My name is Ty Landers, and I've been fixing cars in West Texas for 15 years. I've seen engines that shouldn't run keep going for another 100,000 miles, and brand new vehicles die for no reason anyone could explain. But what happened on Highway 385 outside Odessa in August of 2022, that wasn't mechanical failure. That was something else entirely. I was heading home from a late job, maybe 10:30 at night, driving my tow truck north toward Andrews. The highway was empty like it usually is that time of night, just endless black asphalt cutting through darker scrubland, The kind of road where you can drive for 30 minutes without seeing another pair of headlights. The air was hot, even with the sun long gone. That thick August heat that makes everything feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. I had my windows down, radio playing some old country station out of Midland, and I was thinking about nothing except getting home and cracking open a cold beer when I saw the car on the shoulder. It was a Honda Civic, maybe 10 years old, silver in my headlights, hazards blinking weakly. Someone was standing next to it, a woman, her phone held up like she was trying to get a signal. I slowed down, pulled in behind her, and grabbed my flashlight before getting out. "Evening," I called out as I approached, making sure to keep my hands visible. Woman alone on a dark highway at night. Last thing I wanted to do was spook her. "You having car trouble?" She turned, and I could see the relief wash over her face. She was maybe 35, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing scrubs like she'd just gotten off a shift at a hospital. Her name tag, I'd notice later, said Elena Ruiz, RN. "Thank God," she said, lowering her phone. "My car just died. 1 second it was running fine, the next everything just shut off. No warning lights, no strange sounds, just dead." I've heard that story 1,000 times, and 99 times out of 100, it's the alternator or a bad battery connection. "Let me take a look. Pop the hood for me." She reached in through the driver's window and pulled the release. I walked to the front of the car, lifted the hood, and propped it open. That's when I noticed the first strange thing. The engine was covered in dust. Normal for a car in West Texas, where everything gets coated in a fine layer of dirt and grit. But right in the center of the engine block, there was a perfectly clean circle maybe 8 inches across. Not smudged, not wiped clean, but pristine. Like someone had used a laser to vaporize every speck of dust in that exact spot. "That's weird," I muttered, leaning closer with my flashlight. "What's weird?" Elena came around to stand next to me, looking at where I was pointing. "See that clean spot? Right there in the middle? Dust doesn't just disappear like that. And it's a perfect circle, too perfect." She stared at it, then reached out like she was going to touch it, but stopped. "Is that bad? I mean, is that what killed my car? I don't know. I've never seen anything like it." I checked the battery connections, the alternator belt, the obvious things. Everything looked fine. "Try starting it now." Elena got back in the driver's seat and turned the key. Nothing. No click, no attempt to turn over, no dashboard lights. Completely dead, like the battery had been pulled. "Your battery's brand new," I said, checking the date stamp. "Installed 3 months ago. There's no reason it should be this dead." That's when I felt it. A pressure, not physical exactly, but like the air had gotten heavier, thicker. The kind of feeling you get right before a thunderstorm. That electric tension that makes the hair on your arms stand up. I straightened up, looking around, trying to figure out what was triggering my instincts. "Do you feel that?" Elena asked quietly, and I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. "Yeah, something's not right." The night had gone silent. I hadn't noticed it until that moment, but all the normal sounds, the crickets, and the distant highway noise and the wind through the scrub brush, everything had stopped. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. "Ty," Elena said, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Look up." I looked up. About 200 feet above us, maybe a little higher, there was a light. Not moving. Not making a sound. Just hovering there perfectly still. It wasn't bright. Not like a searchlight or helicopter spotlight. It was more like a soft glow, pale white with hints of blue, and it was pulsing gently. And here's the thing that made my blood run cold. It was pulsing in sync with our breathing. I took a breath in. The light brightened. Exhaled, it dimmed. Elena breathed, same pattern. We were standing there breathing together, and this thing in the sky was matching us perfectly, like it was monitoring us, studying us. "What is that?" Elena whispered. "I don't know." My hand went to my phone in my pocket, but when I pulled it out, the screen was dead. Just like Elena's car, just like everything electronic seemed to be within range of that light. "My phone's dead too. This isn't happening," Elena said. But her voice said she knew it was. "This can't be happening." The light pulsed brighter, holding for a moment, and I felt that pressure in my head, that same electric feeling but inside my skull now. Not painful, but uncomfortable, like someone was pressing gently but firmly against my temples. "We need to get out of here," I said, grabbing Elena's arm. "Get in my truck, now." We ran to my tow truck, or tried to, but our legs felt heavy, like we were moving through water. Everything seemed to be happening in slow motion, each step taking forever, the distance to the truck stretching out impossibly. I reached the driver's door, yanked it open, and tried to get in. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't respond. I was frozen mid-motion, one foot on the running board, one hand on the door frame, unable to move forward or back. Elena was frozen too, standing with her hand on the passenger door handle, her mouth open like she was trying to scream, but no sound coming out. The light descended, slowly, smoothly, dropping down from 200 feet to maybe 50, then 20, then close enough that I could see details. It wasn't a solid object, or maybe it was, but my eyes couldn't quite resolve it into something coherent. It was like looking at something through water, the edges shifting and blurring, the shape never quite staying the same. And around that central light there were other lights, smaller ones, moving in patterns that hurt to watch, geometric shapes that couldn't exist in three-dimensional space. The pressure in my head intensified, and suddenly I wasn't on the highway anymore. I was somewhere else, seeing something I couldn't understand. I saw the highway from above, saw my truck and Elena's car like toys on a table. Saw the light hovering over us. Saw other lights in the distance, forming a pattern across the entire region, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all pulsing in that same synchronized rhythm. Then the perspective shifted, and I was looking at Earth from space, the whole planet visible. And there were lights everywhere, scattered across the surface like stars, all pulsing together in some vast coordinated network. Then closer again, and I was looking at myself and Elena, frozen by my truck, and I could see something my eyes hadn't been able to see before. There were shapes around us, translucent and shifting, moving through the air like fish through water. They were examining us, studying us, and I could feel their curiosity like a physical touch. They weren't hostile. That was the strange part. They were just intensely, overwhelmingly curious, like scientists examining bacteria under a microscope, with no malice but also no concern for how the bacteria might feel about being studied. One of them drifted closer to me, and I tried to look at it directly, to see what it really was, but my brain couldn't process it. Every time I thought I had a shape, it would shift, become something else, tall and thin, then short and wide, then not there at all, then everywhere at once. It reached out with something that might have been a hand, or a tentacle, or a beam of light, I honestly couldn't tell, and touched my forehead. The world exploded into information. I saw my entire life flash by, every memory I'd ever had playing simultaneously. I saw Elena's life too, her childhood in El Paso, her nursing school, her divorce 2 years ago, her son who lived with his father in Houston. I saw the lives of people I'd never met, hundreds of them, thousands, all the people these beings had studied, all their memories and experiences flowing through my consciousness like a river. And beneath it all, I felt a question being asked, not in words, but in pure concept. Why do you fear? Why do you resist? We mean no harm. We only seek to understand. I tried to answer, tried to explain that having your mind rifled through like a filing cabinet was terrifying regardless of intent, but I couldn't form coherent thoughts. Everything was too much, too fast, too overwhelming. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. I was back in my body, gasping for air, my hand still on the truck door. The light was rising back up into the sky, moving faster now, the smaller lights swirling around it like a school of fish. In seconds it was 100 feet up, then 200, then just a point of light among the stars, then gone. The night sounds rushed back all at once. Crickets, wind, the distant rumble of a truck on the highway miles away. Everything was normal again, except nothing would ever be normal again. Elena collapsed against the passenger door, sliding down to sit on the ground, her face pale and shocked. I wasn't much better. My legs shaking so bad I had to lean against the truck to stay upright. "Did that just happen?" she asked, her voice rough. "Tell me that just happened. Tell me I'm not crazy." "It happened," I said, and my voice didn't sound like my own. "I saw it too. All of it. My life," she whispered. "It saw my life. Everything. Every moment. Every memory. Every private thought. How is that possible? How can anything do that?" I didn't have an answer. I pulled out my phone, and the screen lit up normally, showing 11:47 p.m. But that couldn't be right. We'd been frozen, examined for what felt like hours. How had only 17 minutes passed? "Try your car," I said to Elena. She pulled herself up, walked on shaky legs to her Honda, and got in. The engine started on the first try, running smooth and normal like it had never died. "It's working," she called out, and I could hear the confusion in her voice. "Everything's working fine." I walked over and looked under the hood again. The dust was back. Not the same dust pattern as before, but fresh dust, evenly distributed, covering the whole engine, including that spot that had been so perfectly clean, like it had never been cleaned at all, like the clean circle had never existed. "This doesn't make sense," I said, running my hand over the engine. My fingers came away dirty. 5 minutes ago, this spot was clean. Now it's like it never was. "Maybe we imagined it," Elena said. But she didn't sound convinced. "We didn't imagine that thing in the sky. We didn't imagine being frozen, or the visions, or any of it." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "What do we do now? Do we report this? Call the police? Tell someone what happened?" I thought about that. Thought about trying to explain to a police officer that we'd been examined by aliens on Highway 385, that we'd been frozen in time while something rifled through our memories. They'd think we were drunk or high, or having a shared delusion. "I don't know if anyone would believe us," I said honestly. "I work at Odessa Regional Medical Center," Elena said slowly. "If I go to work tomorrow and tell people I was abducted by aliens, they'll have me evaluated for fitness to practice. They might think I'm having a breakdown. I work at Landers Auto on 8th Street. If I tell my customers about this, I'll be the crazy mechanic who thinks aliens are shutting down cars. Not great for business." We stood there in the hot August night, both of us understanding that what had just happened was real and profound and terrifying, and also something we might never be able to share with anyone who hadn't experienced it themselves. "So we just go home?" Elena asked. "Pretend this never happened? I don't know what else to do." She looked up at the sky, at the stars scattered across the black expanse, and I could see tears on her face. "I feel violated," she said quietly. They went through my mind like it was a book they were browsing. Every private thought, every memory, every moment I've ever wanted to forget. They saw all of it. I know. I felt it too. And the worst part is, I could feel them. Their thoughts, their intentions. They weren't being cruel. They genuinely don't understand why we'd mind. To them, we're just data. Interesting data, sure, but still just information to be collected and studied. That was it exactly. That was what had been so disturbing about the whole experience. Not that they were hostile, but that they were indifferent to our feelings, our sense of self, our right to privacy. We were specimens to them, nothing more. "Are they coming back?" Elena asked. "I don't know, maybe. Probably." I looked up at the sky, too, wondering if they were still up there. Watching, recording, studying. I got the feeling this wasn't the first time they've done this. That there are others, lots of others, who've had similar experiences. Do you think anyone would believe us if we tried to find them? Other people who've been through this? Maybe. There are forums online, support groups for people who claim they've had alien encounters. I always thought they were crazy. I laughed bitterly. Guess I'm one of them now. Elena pulled out her phone, looking at it like it was a foreign object. 11:50 p.m. I was supposed to be home an hour ago. My neighbor's watching my dog. She's probably worried. She looked at me, and I could see the fear still lingering in her eyes. What do I tell her? Sorry I'm late. I was abducted by aliens? Tell her your car broke down. Tell her a mechanic stopped to help and got it running again. It's the truth, just not all of it. She nodded slowly. What about you? Anyone waiting for you at home? Just a cat and a cold beer. Both will keep. I walked back to my truck, then turned. Elena, if you ever need to talk about this, if you're struggling with what happened, here's my card. I pulled out a business card from my wallet and handed it to her. I know we're strangers, but we went through something together that no one else would understand. Sometimes that matters. She took the card, looking at it for a long moment. Landers Auto Repair, Thailanders, owner. She met my eyes. Thank you. For stopping, for being here. I don't know what would have happened if I'd been alone when that thing showed up. Same thing, probably. I don't think we had any choice in what happened, but I'm glad you weren't alone either. We stood there awkwardly for another moment. Two strangers bound together by an experience that would probably haunt us for the rest of our lives. Then Elena got in her car. I got in my truck, and we both drove away from that spot on Highway 385 where something impossible had happened. I drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying everything I'd seen and felt, trying to make sense of it. My apartment was dark when I got there, just like I'd left it. My cat, Diesel, meowed at me from the couch. Everything was completely normal, completely mundane, and somehow that made everything worse. Because I knew now that normal was an illusion. That there were things out there, beings beyond our understanding, watching and studying us, and there was nothing we could do about it. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on my couch with Diesel on my lap, drinking beer and staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of knowledge I never asked for and couldn't share. The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. I went to work every day, fixed cars, talked to customers, went through all the normal motions. But everything felt different, like I was watching my life from outside my body, playing a role in a play I didn't remember rehearsing. The worst part was the dreams. Every night I'd close my eyes and see that light, feel that pressure in my head, experience that overwhelming flood of information and memories. Sometimes they were my memories, sometimes Elena's, sometimes the memories of people I'd never met, all jumbled together until I couldn't tell where I ended and others began. I'd wake up gasping, covered in sweat, Diesel staring at me with those judgmental cat eyes like she knew something was wrong, but couldn't figure out what. I thought about calling Elena a dozen times. I had her number. She'd texted me the day after the incident just to say, "Are you okay?" And I'd responded, "Not really, you?" And she'd said no, and that had been it. Two people drowning in the same ocean, both too far away to help each other. But on the 23rd day after the incident, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. I was already awake, hadn't slept more than 3 hours straight since that night on the highway. When I saw her name on the screen, I answered immediately. "Elena? They're back," she said, and her voice was shaking. "Ty, they're back. I can see the light from my bedroom window. It's hovering over my neighborhood." I was out of bed and pulling on clothes before she finished the sentence. "Where are you?" "Midland, West Side, Northwood Subdivision. I'm at 4782 Fairmont Drive. I'm 20 minutes away. Stay inside, lock your doors, don't go near the windows." "Ty, I can feel it again, that pressure. It's trying to get in my head. Fight it. Think about something else, anything else. I'm on my way." I broke every speed limit getting to Midland, my tow truck pushing 90 on the empty highway. My phone stayed connected to Elena the whole time, and I could hear her breathing, fast and panicked, occasionally whispering, "It's still there, still watching." When I pulled into her neighborhood, I saw it immediately. The light, same as before, hovering maybe 300 feet up, positioned directly over a small single-story house that had to be Elena's. It was pulsing slowly, that same gentle rhythm, but this time it felt different, more focused, more intentional. I parked in her driveway and ran to the front door. She opened it before I could knock, pulling me inside quickly and slamming the door behind me. "It's been there for 40 minutes, she said, and I could see she'd been crying. "I tried to leave, to drive away, but my car won't start. My phone won't make calls except to you. The TV won't turn on. It's like it's isolating me, cutting me off." I looked around her living room. Normal furniture, normal decorations, photos of a boy who must be her son on the walls. Everything completely ordinary except for the soft glow coming through the windows from the impossible thing hovering outside. "Why you?" I asked. "Why did it come back to you specifically?" "I don't know. Maybe because I'm alone. Maybe because it's not done studying me." She wrapped her arms around herself, shaking despite the heat. "Or maybe it liked what it found in my head and wants more." That thought made my skin crawl. The idea that we'd been interesting enough to warrant a return visit, that we were being added to some kind of alien research database as particularly fascinating specimens. "We need to document this," I said, pulling out my phone. "Take pictures, video, anything." But when I tried to open my camera app, the phone froze. The screen showed the time, 2:37 a.m., but nothing else would respond. Elena tried her phone with the same result. "It won't let us," she said. "It knows what we're trying to do, and it won't let us create evidence." The light outside pulsed brighter, and suddenly that pressure was back in my head, stronger than before. But this time, it wasn't just pushing, it was pulling, trying to draw me outside, to bring me closer. "Do you feel that?" Elena asked. "Yeah, it wants us to come out." "No way. I'm not going out there. Last time I thought I was going to die or disappear or—" A sound cut her off. Not a physical sound, but something felt rather than heard. A low vibration that made the windows rattle and the floor shake. And with it came a feeling, an emotion that wasn't ours, impatience. "I think we made it angry, I said. The lights in the house began to flicker. On, off, faster and faster. until they were strobing. Picture frames rattled on the walls. The TV turned itself on, showing nothing but static that pulsed in sync with the light outside. "This is a poltergeist movie," Elena said, her voice rising toward hysteria. "This is not real life. This doesn't happen in real life." But it was happening. The temperature dropped suddenly, our breath fogging in the air. The static on the TV began to resolve into shapes, patterns that looked almost like symbols or writing in a language that hurt to look at. And the pressure in my head became pain, sharp and bright, like something was trying to crack open my skull to get at what was inside. "All right," I shouted, not sure if the thing could even hear me. "All right, we'll come out, just stop." The pressure vanished immediately. The lights stopped flickering. The TV went dark. The temperature returned to normal. Everything was suddenly quiet and still, like the house was holding its breath, waiting. Elena looked at me, her face pale. "We don't have to actually go out there, right? We can just wait it out, stay inside until morning?" But I knew that wasn't going to work. This thing, whatever it was, had come back for a reason. It wanted something from us, and it wasn't going to leave until it got it. "I don't think we have a choice," I said. "But we stay together, okay? Whatever happens, we don't get separated." She nodded, grabbing my hand. Her palm was sweaty, and I could feel her trembling, but she moved toward the door with me. We stepped out into her front yard, and the August night was as hot as ever, thick air that barely moved. The light was directly overhead now, maybe 200 feet up, pulsing steadily, and I could see them again, those translucent shapes moving through the air around it, drifting and swirling like jellyfish in a current. "Can you see them?" I whispered to Elena. "The shapes in the air? Yes. I thought I was imagining them last time, but they're real, aren't they?" "Yeah, they're real." One of them drifted down toward us, and as it got closer I could almost make out details. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but wrong in every proportion. Too tall, too thin. Limbs that seemed to have too many joints. Its head was elongated, smooth, and where a face should have been there was just a blank surface that somehow still conveyed expression. It stopped about 10 feet away, floating there, and I felt that pressure in my head again, but this time it was different, more controlled, almost gentle. And with it came communication. Not words, but concepts flowing directly into my consciousness. Gratitude. It was grateful we'd come outside. Curiosity. It wanted to know why we'd been afraid, why we'd hidden. Confusion. It didn't understand our fear, couldn't comprehend why being studied would cause distress. I tried to send concepts back, tried to explain privacy, autonomy, the violation of having your mind invaded without permission. I don't know if it understood, but I felt it considering, processing, examining the ideas like a child learning something completely new. Then it sent another concept. Request. It wanted to study us more closely. Not invasively like last time, but carefully, respectfully. It wanted our permission. "Is it asking us?" Elena whispered. "Is it actually asking if it can study us?" "I think so. It learned from last time. It learned that we have the concept of consent, and it's trying to respect that. Can we say no? That was the question. Could we refuse? Would it accept our refusal, or would it just take what it wanted like before? I sent the question back. What if we refuse? The response was immediate. Disappointment, but acceptance. It would leave. It would find other subjects to study, other minds to examine. We were interesting, but not essential. "It says it'll leave if we refuse," I told Elena. She was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the light, at the being hovering in front of us. Then she said, "Ask it what it wants to know." Ask it why we're so interesting. I sent the question. The answer came back in a flood of concepts and images. They were from somewhere else, somewhere so far away that even traveling at impossible speeds, it had taken them longer than human civilization had existed to reach Earth. They were explorers, scientists, collectors of knowledge about all the different forms consciousness could take in the universe. They'd found Earth by accident, following signals we'd broadcast into space decades ago. And what they'd found fascinated them. A species barely aware of the greater universe, still confined to one planet, but already demonstrating complex consciousness, abstract thought, creativity, and something they found particularly intriguing: emotion. Most species they'd encountered were logical, rational, efficient. But humans were messy, driven by feelings that often contradicted logic, making decisions based on things like love and fear and hope. We were irrational and inefficient and completely fascinating, and they wanted to understand us better, wanted to figure out how consciousness could evolve to be so emotional, so contradictory, so beautifully flawed. "We're interesting because we're messy," Elena said, and I could hear a laugh in her voice that bordered on hysteria. "We traveled all the way across the galaxy because humans are entertainingly dysfunctional." That's one way to put it. The being sent another concept. Offer. If we agreed to let them study us, really study us, they would give us something in return. Knowledge. Understanding. A glimpse of what they knew of the vast universe beyond our tiny planet, of truths that humanity wouldn't discover for millennia if we survived that long. "Is it offering to trade?" Elena asked. "Our cooperation for their knowledge?" I think so." "What kind of knowledge?" I asked. The answer was overwhelming. Everything. The nature of consciousness, the structure of reality, the truth about time, space, existence itself, technologies that could cure diseases, end hunger, let humans travel to the stars. All of it, free for the taking, if we would simply let them study us. It was the most tempting offer I'd ever received, and the most terrifying, because knowledge like that, given to a species like humanity, could either save us or destroy us, and there was no way to know which until it was too late. "Ty," Elena said quietly, "I want to say yes." "What?" "I want to say yes. I'm a nurse. I spend every day watching people suffer from diseases we can't cure, conditions we barely understand. If they have knowledge that could help, if they know things that could save lives, how can I say no? But what's the cost? What will they do to us? How will they study us?" She looked at me, and in her eyes I could see the same thing I was feeling: desperate curiosity mixed with primal fear. "I don't know, but maybe it's worth finding out." I looked up at the being, at the light hovering above us, at the impossible reality of our situation. We could refuse, could go back inside, could try to return to our normal lives and pretend this was all a strange nightmare. Or we could take a leap into the unknown, accepting whatever consequences came with it. "If we do this," I said, "we do it together. No getting separated, no being studied individually. We stay together." Elena nodded. Together. I sent the concept to the being. Agreement, but with conditions. We stay together, we're not harmed. And when you're done, you bring us back exactly to this spot. No missing time, no side effects. The being considered this. Then, accepted. The light descended, moving smoothly down from 200 feet to 100 to 50. It was huge up close, easily the size of a house, and the smaller lights swirling around it were the size of cars. The translucent beings gathered around us, more of them than I'd seen before, maybe a dozen, all watching with that blank-faced curiosity. Elena gripped my hand tighter. "Are you sure about this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The light enveloped us, warm and strangely comfortable, and I felt my feet leave the ground. We were rising, floating up into that impossible craft, and the last thing I saw before everything went white was Elena's face, terrified and determined, holding on to me like I was the only solid thing in the universe. Then we were somewhere else. Inside was nothing like I expected. I'd imagined sterile metal corridors and examination tables, alien technology that looked cold and mechanical. Instead, we were in a space that seemed to be made of light itself, walls and floor and ceiling all glowing with that same soft white-blue radiance. The surfaces weren't solid, they rippled and shifted like water, but somehow held their shape. Elena and I were standing, or floating, it was hard to tell, still holding hands. The beings surrounded us, watching, and I could feel their attention like a physical weight. One of them drifted closer, and this time, when I looked at it, my brain could process more details. It wasn't that they were constantly shifting, I realized, but that they existed slightly out of phase with our reality, like we were seeing three-dimensional shadows of four-dimensional beings. It reached out, and I flinched instinctively, but Elena squeezed my hand. "Together," she whispered. The being touched my forehead, and this time, instead of an overwhelming flood of information, there was a gentle pull, like opening a door to let someone peek inside. I could feel it examining my memories, but carefully now, respectfully, like a librarian browsing books rather than a thief ransacking a house. It was looking at my childhood, at memories of my father teaching me about cars, of hours spent in his garage learning to diagnose problems by sound and feel. It lingered on a memory of fixing my first engine, the pride I'd felt when it roared to life. Then it moved to more recent memories, to the satisfaction I got from helping people, from solving problems, from the connection between my hands and machines, and I realized what it was studying. Purpose. It wanted to understand why I did what I did, what drove me to spend my days fixing other people's broken vehicles, what satisfaction I derived from it. I tried to send the concept back. I help people, that's the point. When someone's stranded, scared, stuck, I help them move again. It's not about the money or the status, it's about being useful, about making a difference however small. The being absorbed this, processed it, and I felt something like understanding flow back. Then it moved to Elena, touching her forehead in the same gentle way. She gasped, and I held her hand tighter. "It's okay," I said. "Let it look." Through our connection, I could feel what it was examining in Elena's mind. Memories of nursing school, of her first day working in an emergency room, of holding a patient's hand while they died, of the exhaustion and grief and stubborn determination to keep helping even when it hurt. It was studying compassion, the ability to feel others' pain and choose to alleviate it despite the emotional cost. Another uniquely human trait that fascinated them. Then, something unexpected happened. The being pulled back, and suddenly Elena and I weren't just connected to it. We were connected to each other. Really connected. I could feel what she felt, see what she saw, experience her memories like they were mine. I saw her son being born, the overwhelming love and terror of becoming a mother. Saw her marriage falling apart, the gradual realization that some things can't be fixed. Saw her alone in her house after her ex-husband took their son to Houston, the grief and loneliness that had driven her to work longer hours, to fill her life with anything except silence. And she saw my memories too. My father dying of cancer when I was 19, leaving me the garage and the responsibility of supporting my mother. The relationships I'd let wither because work was easier than vulnerability. The quiet loneliness of a life spent fixing things for others while neglecting to fix myself. We stood there, or floated there, staring at each other with tears streaming down our faces, understanding each other completely for the first time. Not just the surface understanding of names and occupations, but deep comprehension of what shaped us, what drove us, what terrified us. "I didn't know," Elena whispered. "I didn't know you were so lonely too." "Same," I said. "I thought I was the only one hiding from life by staying busy." The beings around us pulsed with what felt like satisfaction. They'd learned something about human connection and empathy and the way we used work to shield ourselves from emotional pain. And by studying us, they'd inadvertently given us something too. Genuine understanding of another person, something rare and precious. The light shifted, and suddenly we were seeing something new. Images flowing through our consciousness, knowledge being offered as promised. Not all at once, not enough to overwhelm, but carefully metered, like sipping from a fire hose. I saw medicines that could cure cancers, repair genetic damage, regenerate dying tissue. Saw energy sources that were clean and infinite, technologies that could heal the planet's climate, ways to grow food in any environment without depleting resources. I saw faster-than-light travel, not through speed, but by folding space, by stepping through dimensions we couldn't normally perceive. Saw other worlds, other species, the vast web of civilizations scattered across the galaxy, most of them unaware of each other, all of them struggling with their own versions of the same fundamental questions. Why do we exist? What is our purpose? Are we alone? And I saw the answer to that last question. No, never. The universe teemed with life, with consciousness in forms so diverse that human imagination couldn't compass them all. We were part of something vast and ancient and continuing, a cosmic experiment in awareness itself. But the knowledge came with a warning, not spoken, but felt. This is too much for you to carry alone. This would drive you mad if you tried to hold it all. So we give you fragments, glimpses, enough to know it exists, but not enough to destroy you. The images faded, and we were back in that space of light. Elena and I still connected, still holding hands, still crying from the overwhelming nature of what we'd experienced. "Did you see?" Elena asked. "I saw. The cures, the technologies, all of it. We have to tell people. We have to share this." But even as she said it, I could feel the knowledge fading, slipping away like a dream upon waking. I tried to hold on to it, to remember the details, but it was like trying to grab water with my hands. The feeling remained, the certainty that these things existed, but the specifics dissolved into vague impressions. "It's fading," I said. "I can't remember the details. Me neither. Why would they show us if they're not going to let us remember?" The being closest to us sent a concept: protection. The knowledge was too dangerous for humans at this stage of development. We would use it to destroy ourselves before we learned wisdom. So they'd given us a glimpse, proof that solutions existed, hope for the future, but not the means to reach for technology we weren't ready to handle responsibly. "That's not fair," Elena said, anger mixing with her tears. "You can't show us cures for cancer and then take the knowledge away. People are dying. My patients are dying. I could help them if you'd just let me remember." But the being was unmoved. Compassion, yes. Understanding, yes. But also conviction that they were right. That protecting humanity from itself was more important than alleviating immediate suffering. "When?" Elena asked. "When will we be ready? When will you come back and share this for real?" The answer was uncertain. When you stop destroying each other. When you look up from your planet and think of yourselves as citizens of a universe rather than members of competing tribes. When compassion becomes your default rather than your exception. Maybe decades, maybe centuries, maybe never. That's your answer? I said. Try harder, and maybe someday we'll be worthy of your help? But even as I said it, I knew they were probably right. Humanity, with access to unlimited clean energy, would probably use it to build better weapons. Humanity, with faster-than-light travel, would probably use it to spread our conflicts to other worlds. We had so much potential, but we were still so broken, so focused on differences rather than commonalities. The light began to fade, and I felt us descending. The study was complete. They'd learned what they came to learn, had given us what they considered a fair trade, and now it was time to return us. Wait, Elena said. Will we see you again? Will you come back? The answer was maybe. They would continue studying Earth, continue observing humanity's development. Some of us would be contacted again, studied further, used as long-term data points in their research. But it wouldn't be predictable, wouldn't follow any pattern we could anticipate. They would come when they came, and all we could do was live our lives and hope we were ready if they chose us again. Then we were back in Elena's front yard, the hot August night pressing in around us, the light already rising back up into the sky. The beings drifted away, those translucent shapes becoming harder to see as they rose, until they were just hints of movement around that central glow. Elena and I stood there holding hands, watching the light climb higher and higher, until it was just another point among the stars, then vanished completely. We looked at each other, and I could see in her face the same mixture of emotions I was feeling: awe, terror, grief, wonder, and underneath it all, a profound change that couldn't be undone. What time is it? Elena asked. I checked my phone. 2:47 a.m., 10 minutes. We'd been gone for what felt like hours, experienced lifetimes of connection and knowledge and understanding, and only 10 minutes had passed. I can still feel it, Elena said quietly. That connection. I can't see your memories anymore, but I can feel you. Like there's a thread between us now that wasn't there before. I feel it too, like we're bonded somehow, like we understand each other in a way most people never understand anyone. She looked up at the sky, at the stars scattered across the black expanse. Do you think they're right? That we're not ready for their knowledge? That we'd destroy ourselves with it? Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I think they're right. I wish they weren't, but they are. So what do we do now? Go back to our normal lives? Pretend this didn't happen? I don't think we can pretend. But maybe we can use it. Use what we learned, what we felt. Try to be better. Try to help more. Try to work toward that future where we're worthy of their help. Elena smiled, sad but genuine. That's very optimistic for a mechanic who fixes broken cars. That's very cynical for a nurse who saves lives. She laughed, and the sound broke some of the tension. We were still us, still human, still flawed and frightened and uncertain. But we were also different now, changed by what we'd experienced, bound together by something we'd probably never fully understand. I should let you get some sleep, I said. It's late, and tomorrow is, well, tomorrow. Will I see you again? Elena asked. I mean, outside of alien encounters. I thought about that thread between us, the connection forged by beings from beyond the stars. Yeah, I said. I think we will. I think we have to. Nobody else would understand. And sometimes understanding is the only thing that keeps you sane. She nodded. then on impulse pulled me into a hug. We stood there in her front yard, two strangers who'd been transformed into something more, holding each other like we were the only solid things in an uncertain universe. When we finally let go, she went inside and I got in my truck. I drove home slowly, thinking about everything that had happened, everything I'd seen and felt. The knowledge was fading, yes, but the certainty remained. We weren't alone. There were answers to our questions, and someday, if we survived long enough, we might be worthy of receiving them. My cat was waiting for me when I got home, annoyed at being ignored for so long. I fed her, drank a beer, and finally fell asleep just as the sun was rising. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I didn't dream about lights or aliens or invasions. I dreamed about Elena, about connection, about understanding, about the possibility that maybe loneliness wasn't a permanent condition. The next morning, I went to work like always. Fixed cars, talked to customers, went through the motions. But everything was different now. Every time someone thanked me for helping them, for getting them back on the road, I thought about purpose and compassion and the things that made us human. And every few days, Elena would text me. Nothing profound, just, "How are you?" or "Still here?" or "Thinking about that night." And I'd text back, and we'd maintain that connection, that thread between two people who'd seen something impossible together. 3 months later, she invited me to coffee. We sat in a diner on the outskirts of Midland and talked about everything except aliens, her son's upcoming visit, my mother's health. Normal things, mundane things, beautiful things that anchored us to Earth and humanity and reality. But at the end, as we were leaving, she looked up at the afternoon sky and said, "Do you think they're watching right now?" "Probably," I said. "They're always watching." "Does it bother you, being studied like that?" I thought about it. It used to, but now I think maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's even flattering in a weird way. Of all the species in the universe, they found us interesting enough to study. That has to count for something. Elena smiled. "We're interesting because we're messy. Never forget that." "How could I? You're walking proof." She punched my arm, and we both laughed, and for a moment everything was normal and good and human. That's my story. That's what happened on Highway 385 outside Odessa in August 2022, and in Elena's front yard 3 weeks later. I don't have proof. My phone didn't record anything. There's no physical evidence except for memories that feel increasingly dreamlike as time passes. But I know it was real. Elena knows it was real. And somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the solar system, beyond distances I can't comprehend, they know it was real too. They're still watching, still studying, still trying to understand this messy, emotional, irrational species that somehow produces compassion and connection despite all our flaws. And maybe someday, when we've grown enough, when we've learned enough, when we finally deserve it, they'll come back. Not to study, but to teach. Not to observe, but to share. Not as superior beings examining interesting specimens, but as equals meeting equals. Until then, I fix cars. Elena saves lives. And we both try to be worthy of the knowledge we glimpsed, the future we imagined, the hope we were given. My name is Ty Landers. I'm a mechanic in West Texas, and I believe in aliens. Every word is true.